Coming to you from Blue Crew Studio in Temecula, California, it's the Whiskey Throttle Show, taking you inside the lives and careers of the legends and leaders of action sports. Today's guest is brought to you by Yamaha. Yamaha is the industry leader in 2- and 4-wheel fun and performance. Motocross, off-road, adventure, side-by-side, Yamaha sets the standard. Yamaha revs your heart. The Whiskey Throttle Show is presented by Motorsport.com. It doesn't matter if you like to pull a throttle cable on a dirt bike, street bike, side-by-side. Motorsport.com is putting riders first with parts, gear, and accessories, including some of our partners like Troy Lee Designs, Dunlop, Pro Circuit, and more. They offer first returns free on apparel so you can buy with confidence. And Motorsport.com offers fast, free shipping on all orders over $79. Make your next ride your best ride. Visit Motorsport.com. Troy Lee made a name for himself as the most elite helmet painter in all forms of motorsport racing. His ability to make a stationary object look fast is something rare. That creativity gave way to motocross and mountain bike gear, helmets, and an arsenal of protective equipment aimed at keeping racers on the track and out of a doctor's office. The 2025 TLD line is out, and it's as fast as ever. Troy Lee Designs, blending speed and style. Hey everybody, welcome to the Whiskey Throttle Show. I'm your host, David Pingree, and we're joined today in the Blue Crew studio by a Blue Crew rider himself, actually, multi-time American road race champion, Josh Hayes. Josh, welcome to the show, bud.
Thanks for having me, man.
Stoked to have you. We talked about this a long time ago, and I think you were just about to go in for a knee surgery then.
Maybe.
That was the last time we chatted about it, and then...
It's funny because we bump into each other pretty often. I feel like we seem to like the same
the same
thing.
tracks.
Yeah, we go to Kahia a lot, stuff like that. But
yeah.
This might be the first podcast I've been nervous to do. Usually I'm like, bring it on. I'm ready for anything. But,
what makes you nervous?
Within the same family with motorcycling, but definitely a different area, being primarily a motocross guy, and the different communities, and kind of not sure what to expect, I guess.
Well, we asked some weird questions, so you're in trouble.
I might be all right with it. I think I will be.
No, I mean, obviously we're mostly moto, but the show originally, the concept was action sports, you know, and then we've had Caballero on, and professional skiers, and Kalani Robb, surfer, and musicians, and everything. So I do like to sprinkle in, some other guys, and road racing is such a close.
Road racing's familiar, but also the moto community, they can be a little bit of a rough community sometimes too.
Sometimes we're not here. We're pretty chill here. We don't get weird. We start our shows with the motorsport.com gate drop, guys. Anything you need for your bikes, doesn't matter what it is, road, street, go to motorsport.com. They've got it for you. Ship it right to you without even getting off the couch. Speaking of motoing, how much are you motoing these days? Not
as much as I'd like, So, man,
because you're a pretty good rider. For people at home,
I appreciate that.
You get after it pretty good, and I like you're real analytical with your bike setup, because we've had multiple conversations about the new Yamaha 450 and how that thing is. I don't want to say temperamental, but you need to set it up right to make it work right.
No, for me, there was a lot of trying to understand it, and because it doesn't come as natural, right? So I started road racing first, and I was a pro road racer. I was turning 25 and going pro road racing before I started motocrossing. And so I had ridden a dirt bike a little as a kid, but I'd never raced. I'd never been on a motocross track very many times. And when I did my deal to start pro road racing, motorcycles used to come as part of the deal. We got training equipment, so we got a motorcycle, and I started riding more and more and just going to the local track and trying to figure it out. And man, I love motocross probably more than road racing.
Is that right?
But I'm good at road racing.
Yeah.
And, everything gets a little beat. My hands have gotten a little beat up, so I can get myself into some bad spots sometimes with the motocross. But man, there's a handful of us in the road race community that really, really lean toward it. But it seems to be kind of dwindling a little bit, because now the scene is a little changing over time. More of the young guys going straight into road racing. And a lot of them have that stigma of motocross is dangerous. But, man, I don't think there's a better tool.
It's not. That's crazy talk. Well, and that's it's something I want to talk to you about. It's kind of the different paths to road racing and then also training for you guys. And because I've seen a lot of road race dudes come and do Supermoto especially. That was such a cool meet in the middle In fact, Nicky Hayden was my teammate at TLD Honda
Yeah.
for one of the X Games rounds. And I just remember thinking how cool it was that we had, the Bostroms used to jump in and do that. I don't know if you ever did X Games. Or
I
anything.
did. I didn't do X Games, but I did do a couple of Supermoto races. I did one in Nashville, and I did the Queen Mary when they did the one at the Queen Mary. I did terrible at the Queen Mary.
You did?
Yeah, and they gave me a factory Honda. I got like McGrath's Supercross bike or whatever built into a Supermoto, and I never really gelled with Supermoto a whole lot.
Really?
Like, I did okay. But my two pro Supermotos were like, I had pretty good stories from both of them. And I remember Nashville, my wife was at the GNF doing an amateur, like the big finals in Atlanta. And I got a call from a guy I had worked with in road racing before who had a Honda, who was at Nashville for Supermoto. He's like, hey, why don't you come out for the practice day and just ride? And I left my wife in Atlanta racing and took off and went to Nashville. And I had a pretty good first day just riding it. He said, well, why don't you just stay and race the National, And I did. And I ended up like, just kind of barnstorming and trying to figure it all out. And I ended up in a race with Kerry Hart. And I only knew Kerry from TV,
Yeah.
And I remember you'd come back into the Speedway and they had a
it was a speedway, right?
Yeah, and you jumped into a speedway inside of it. Like there was a smaller oval inside of it. And you jumped in, you kind of did this 180 right, and it might have been a whoop section or something. And then there was a 2-lane, like they had an inside and an outside dirt left, and then a single out on the pavement. And I had been going to the inside to kind of protect it on the inside line, but it had gotten a big kicker on the way out on the single out onto the pavement, and it was really, really nasty. And I was battling with Kerry, so the next one I tried to just rail the outside, and he went to the inside. And when he came out and kind of caught that kicker, I was coming past with some big speed, and as I kind of singled out there onto it, I caught his handlebar like in my elbow and ripped him off the motorcycle. And, oh my God, I thumped him pretty bad. Like he took a beating on the pavement. And it's like, what do? You finish the race, and I'm like, he's got his big trailer over there and all these big looking dudes over there, and I'm like, my God, I'm gonna get thumped on this one.
Yeah, they're all wearing black shirts and tattoos.
Yeah, and I man, after the race, I felt bad, so I went over there. I just go, hey man, are you all right? And he looked at me and he goes, yeah man, you just, and he stopped himself. And he went, I'll see you at the next one. I'm good, man. And I was just like, understood.
He's pretty rational, always racing. He wasn't.
He was
not
never unkind to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, with all the tats and all the media, I kind of was like, oh man, this guy's going to be a thug and he's just going to go nuts.
No, he's a sweetheart. Did that one? Am I thinking of the right year where? Right before the finish, you went around like turns 3 and 4 in the bank.
They had a chicane.
Yeah.
And then you went around 3, 4, and then they had a 180, and they had a couple of the metal ramps that they had built.
I won the 250 class that day.
Did you?
Yeah.
I remember it was what, Brandon Curry
and myself.
That
kind of competing for that title, and I ended up breaking my arm, leading the points. I think I was on a 4 or 5 race.
There was another one. Cassidy was on a Honda.
Cassidy Anderson. Yeah. He was there at TLD the year before I was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he won the championship, then moved up, and I took his spot.
And I think Fillmore was on a big bike.
Fillmore and Wardy.
And was it Wardy? Okay. And
Kurt? Henry was there before. Kurt was on KTM.
Yep.
Kurt Nickel. And
it was an interesting
who's
concept.
the Aussie road race kid who was there on KTM as well?
Troy Herfoss.
Troy Herfoss. Yeah. Good dude.
Here doing baggers now.
Oh, is he?
He's the champ.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I don't follow that too much. That seems crazy to me. That's something else we should talk about is that baggers. What about that? What the hell? I mean, those things don't seem like they're meant to do what you guys are doing on them, or those guys.
What those things are doing is pretty incredible, I got to say. The lap times, the speeds that they're doing, the Daytona 200 now being on the next-gen super sport bikes. Baggers are faster on the banking than the super sport bikes.
It's crazy,
and are within a second of the fastest lap time. It's insane how fast they are going on those motorcycles.
What do they weigh versus a sport bike?
Dude, I think the minimum weight is like 625 pounds, whereas, we're 375.
That's crazy,
It's insane. And honestly, it's funny because I've had a few offers to go bagger racing, but I can't make myself do it.
Have you ridden one?
I haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't, and I've got a lot of good friends that have, and they all say they're a blast to ride, and it's a lot like riding TTRs in the backyard. They're kind of forgiving, which they must be to go as fast as they're going. But man, I just look at them and I go, they're so big,
So big.
And one thing that kind of sent it home for me is I remember watching Tyler O'Hare break a chain in a tight corner at Coda. And then when it threw him off, the bike chases you down because they're so heavy, they're not going to stop that fast, And I was just like, that's it right there. That's the one. Like, that's a big girl jumping on top of you. That thing can hurt you. Yeah. I don't think that's the one for me.
On so many of the clips I see of them, they're like wiggling. They wiggle bad.
They're going to move a lot. Like, they're putting a lot of force through the tires. They're making incredible torque and horsepower. Like, they are...
I'm over it.
It's pretty incredible, and the guys riding them. I mean, when I was asked to do it, it was like, okay, this and that. And then I remember the first time we got to watch Tyler O'Hare and Hayden Gillum riding those things at Laguna Seca and how hard they rode them. And I went, nah, you guys got the right guys. That wasn't for me. So
it's really been a shot in the arm for Road America, though, for the series, because I don't know. It seems like it's really brought out a whole new...
It's hard not to watch it and go, wow, these things are it's incredible what they are doing with these motorcycles. So I think everybody is something of a fan of them. I'm interested to see where it goes or how long it lasts, because right now it's a 2-brand series, quite honestly, right? You've got Harley and Indian. They're the only ones really involved. They're carrying the series, and I think it was announced 2 days ago that they're going to have I believe a 12-race series in Moto GP. It's going to be spec bikes for next year.
On what?
So,
what
on
brand?
Harleys.
On
Harleys. So I know Bradley Smith and Kyle Wyman, who are the factory guys, were there making the announcement in Le Mans this weekend. And so it'll be interesting to see how far it goes. And I mean, it's great. I mean, how many years did we go to Daytona when Bike Week was everything, right? You had dirt track, supercross, road race, off-road, all on the same week.
Yeah.
And when we talk about the heyday of Bike Week, sure, there was a lot of sport bikes, but the number of
Harleys
baggers that were there was incredible. And like to bring some of that crowd to the racetrack. I mean, I see people coming to the racetrack to see those bikes, and then they see the other races as well because they're coming to see the baggers. So all that's great. And it'll be interesting to see, because like Supermoto, it's something a little different. In Supermoto, you couldn't buy a Supermoto bike, right? When that hit home, and we had this big Supermoto series, you had to go buy a dirt bike and build a Supermoto bike. You couldn't just go buy a Supermoto bike. And I think that was part of what kept it from probably continuing at the level that it did. But I don't know. We'll have to see what happens with the baggers.
It'll be interesting. It reminds me of Happy Gilmore. It's like it's brought out this kind of rougher road race crowd,
Maybe, but it's funny because we got GP guys coming, guys that came from GP getting onto these things. And for a while there, it was this and that, but the level of rider that's getting on this motorcycle is getting higher and higher all the time.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's interesting to watch. I've never seen one in person. I imagine the noise and the sound and everything is it's different. It's intriguing. Like you said, everyone's coming to the fences to watch. So.
And they do a little different format, having the challenge, which is kind of like a dash for cash at a dirt track race, things like that they also do with like the top 4 or 6 qualifiers, so they have a little different idea and they do their thing. But I mean, they're for sure getting a big following, and so they're getting more prime time during the race weekend. You know what I mean? Their slots are getting better and better.
That's awesome. Hey, get over to whiskeythrottlemedia.com, you guys. If you haven't checked out our website, all kinds of stuff over there. There's content. It directs you mostly to our YouTube page, but we've got moto, off-road, some dual sport features coming that are really neat, new merch, our live events, golf tournaments, all that stuff's there, and lots of neat stuff. Go check it out. And then our guest, we're going to jump into his story. Brought to you by Yamaha, which is appropriate. Yamaha guy. So tell me about where you grew up.
I grew up in Gulfport, Mississippi, on the Gulf Coast down there.
Okay.
Basically, it's a sandbar, right? Like,
is that I'm trying to think of, is it western or eastern?
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle.
Right in
okay.
the middle of the state, like
Okay.
about halfway between Mobile, Alabama, and New Orleans, Louisiana.
Okay.
And not a lot of motorsports there. That wasn't the big thing there. We had a local dirt track, and we had a couple of motocross tracks. Milton, Florida wasn't too far away, which was a really popular track back in the day.
Okay.
But there was a little bit of motocross. Road racing was a long way away.
Yeah.
And, until
So what did you do as a kid? What were your
I
interests?
was a tennis player. I
Oh,
liked
really?
tennis more than most anything, So I always liked motorcycles. I liked riding bicycles and all of that kind of stuff. My dad was a firefighter. He liked
Oh, he was?
He liked sports, and he did what the firefighters do. For a couple years they get into go-kart racing, and for a couple years they all had some street bikes, and then they got bass fishing, and every few years they seemed like they'd kind of go off and do a different thing. So I got to dabble in all these little
Got to spend
things,
that overtime money somehow.
And yeah, so I was invisible in school. I did, I wanted to be if anything, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I was all into aviation, and I was told by my grandfather pretty young, who was a military, pilot, that I had bad eyes pretty early. I had glasses in the 4th grade, had bad teeth, and he was like, man, at his time, in his era, military, they're not going to take you with that. So I hate to say
crazy.
it.
I've heard.
I hate to say it, but it took my school career and kind of tossed it out the window. I did the bare minimum to get by.
Oh, really? When he told you that, you kind of were like, all right, well, then forget it.
I had a small town view of the world, and quite honestly, I graduated high school. I got my first street bike as a senior in high school, and me and my best friend, Steve Breckenridge, we got our bikes about 2 weeks apart, and we were just hooligans as seniors in high school, ripping around town on our motorcycles. And most of our friends were like younger military guys. We had a couple military bases.
Was there? Okay, I was going to say military bases.
We had a naval CB base, and we had an Air Force training base, and all the guys that were in their 20s, early 20s, making their first money and buying motorcycles, and we would cruise the beach and hang out down there and try to talk to girls and stuff like that, because we had motorcycles and just liked riding. And I remember Steven and I, you look back on it, go into the clover leaves, and, off the interstate, and just doing laps and laps and laps till you just about run out of gas on those things, and acting like morons. And
never had any crashes. Usually that's when you're a kid and a little heavy on the throttle and
nothing to speak of.
Okay.
Like the closest one I did was we went to all my buddies that were in school, that were all in shop and stuff like that. We had a lot of classic cars and stuff. So the drag strip, Tuesday night test and tune, right? So we'd go there. I thought I'd bring my motorcycle down there, and man, I had this salvage title Honda 600 F2, and I took it down there. My dad had told me it was the only thing I couldn't do, so of course I did it. And so I go and I do a run, and when I was done, I didn't even launch it that hard, and I looked and I was like, man, the magazine said it would do this time, like an 11 whatever, and I was only like 2/10 off of it. I weighed about 80 pounds, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, ooh, watch this, and then I looped it out. So off the line. And,
were you wearing a helmet?
oh yeah, I had
Was there helmet laws there?
jacket, pants, good shoes, helmet, gloves.
Okay.
My dad, I had a DS80 was my first real motorcycle. I had a little DS80 my dad found in somebody's backyard, bought for $100 and cleaned up for me for Christmas. Okay. I got that when I was 11, and I was allowed to ride it in a field. So I'd ridden a motorcycle, and he was like, man, number one rule, you got to wear a helmet, and this and that. So he knew everybody in town. Firefighter knew every cop, every firefighter in town. So he's like, if you do anything wrong, I will know.
Yeah.
So I played by the rules, first gear in the alleys to get over to the airport, and I had a little field by the airport I could ride in. And but yeah, when I crashed that thing, I did lie to my dad and told him I crashed on the way to watch people at the drag strip.
That's a white lie.
Yeah, I think he knew better. He just was like, is this fight worth it?
So you had the DT80. What was it?
It was
the first bike?
DS80.
DS80.
Twin shocker, the metal tank.
Yamaha, right?
Little Suzuki.
Oh, Suzuki. Okay.
Little Suzuki.
So was there racing around? Did you consider racing it at all, or you were just?
I begged my dad to race.
Yeah.
And being middle class in southern Mississippi, there wasn't a lot of money the racetrack was a long way away. My dad had done a motocross or two when I was a kid. There was a local track at the time, and I remember him having a Husky with the chrome tank and the red. And I remember sitting on it in the backyard and falling over on it, and him getting upset with me. He wasn't real mad, but I dropped his motorcycle.
Yeah.
And I begged my dad, but he was like, this was a little trail bike, twin shocker, and he was just like, they don't have a racing class. And I go, I don't care, Dad, just I'll do anything. He had just told me a few basic things, right? Like, I had this little field that I rode in. I was, at the time, the only kid in town. There was one other kid that ended up with an XR85 or something like that. That was like, I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, that thing was so nice. Single shock, you know what I mean? Like, but I would go in this field, and he had told me, hey, when you're turning, you're going to scoot forward and stick your leg up there by the front tire. And so whatever I could push up of a berm, I built tracks nonstop, and it was just whatever berms I could push up doing 100 laps through a sandy area, and I'd put stuff together. And no jumps. The shocks were blown anyway, and I got flat tires regularly, and it was just.
Those were the days, though, right? Just the simplest little thing, and you could just.
I sit back now and I think, man, I was like 11 or 12, and my dad let me go ride a motorcycle 100% on my own, like without supervision in this field, and God knows what I could have done. I look now and go, man, I could have really hurt myself because I was dumb enough to do it. You know what I mean? But it was a different time, right? I had my helmet, I had my this and that, and I figured he probably thought, well, if anybody driving by sees him laying in the field, they'll stop and check on him.
Well, this is something that I always probably sound like this old man yelling at the clouds, but that generation, it was just, that's how it was. Yeah. I lived in Montana at the time, and I would take my Weisinger and I'd just disappear off to my friends. I mean, miles away. And we were riding trails and jumping, and my parents were like,
bicycles, right?
Be home by dark. I mean, that was the only rule.
The bicycles were, I had this like area. All right, don't go outside of this.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But now okay, where are you going to be? I have you on Life 360.
The information age, man.
Yeah,
we're all connected to.
But are we making softer people, or are we smarter?
I'm going to say yes.
I don't know.
I'm just going to say yes. It's just different.
It is.
It's different. There's the news also puts a lot of stuff in our face that we know the dangers that are out there in our local communities. Character and stuff like that was a huge thing in the community. I think back then looked out for one another. Where now it's easier for us to turn a blind eye when we see something uncomfortable and have plausible deniability.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I think that's just a thing that happens now, like here in Oceanside, I pedal all the time, and I pedal down this bike path, and you see some rough characters, and I've seen guys laying on the ground, and I'm like, I'm not sure if they're just laying there or if they're hurt.
Yeah.
And there's like, all right, how
involved do I want to get?
How involved do I want to get?
Yeah.
And I've stopped a few times and tried to talk to somebody and go, hey, man, if you don't tell me you're okay, I'm going to call an ambulance to come here and check on you. And finally, they'll go, oh, I'm fine. And it's like, okay, that's fine. You're just laying in a weird spot.
As a fireman, trust me, we go on calls all the time. There's a man down. I think he's dead. Yeah. It's just a drunk or a bum or whatever sleeping.
Yeah.
And we just hit the horn.
And you don't know how they're going to react. So it's like, if this is your thing, it's easy to keep a blind eye to it. And I think in those small towns where I grew up, it was a lot less like that. It was more of a community at that time.
Yeah. Now people just pull their phone out when something's happening and record it. It's
so
like,
they can post it.
Set the phone down and go help. Go get involved. I hate those videos. Did you have? It doesn't sound like anywhere near you was like a pro motocross, pro road race, supercross that you could go to. So like, was that even on your radar at all? Any kind of motorcycle racing?
Not really. Yeah. And honestly, I knew there was amateur motocross stuff around. And there were still a few motocross tracks, and I know of some people, but it was off my radar, quite honestly. And then when I really found the love for street bikes, even when I got my street bike, I had no idea that road racing existed in an amateur level. I had no idea how they got to be on TV, and you know what I mean. But it wasn't in our little world. Yeah. And the local Suzuki shop owner had a son who was a little younger than me, but about my age, and once we got our bikes and we were in the community, and a lot of the guys were in that shop, and we'd go visit the shop and stuff like that, I got to know his son, and he went amateur racing. I don't know how he found it.
Road racing?
He went road racing, amateur. And that was my first look at it. You know what I mean? And I went with him to a race, and I saw him race, and I want to say a little later, he and I kind of got into a discussion about how it was going down. We kind of had differing opinions, and one of the things that sparked me was he kind of said, "You don't know you're not out there," and I was like, "All right, new mission in life, check, just to get out there and be a part of it." And so, right out of high school, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have college plans. We had the couple local community colleges that were decent, and my vision of the world was so small because I'd never been out of Gulfport, and I'd traveled very little outside of that. Family vacations, never went very far. We stayed in our little community, and all of my family was there, so there was really not a lot of reason to leave. So when I found this thing and I go, man, I really want to do this, and I was working as a mechanic, and not sure what I was going to do, work through the summer at a jet ski rental, and then I was starting.
Was this high school time or after?
Just graduating high school, senior year, end of high school. I was working at a jet ski rental, and I was kind of wrenching on their stuff a lot because my dad taught me a lot about working on stuff. And then I took that and got a job for another lady he knew in a Sea-Doo dealership, Gina Nadeau, who became my manager for a while also, for a long time. And I went to work for her, and I was working my butt off, and I found out about this racing thing, right? And I go to my dad, and I go, hey, I want to go do this as a hobby. And I'd watched him get to dabble in his hobbies. And he was like, all right, and this and that. We were trying to figure out how to get started. And the best I could come up with was I go, hey, look, will you help me with, I have a plan. And they co-signed for a personal loan at the local credit union. And I got $3,000. And with that $3,000, I had to stretch it pretty far. So I went and I had my street bike that I was riding to work every day. And I said, okay, I'm going to get some leathers, which I bought the cheapest ones I could find. These little AGV, $300 or $400 at the time. I bought a new helmet, the gloves and boots I needed. I found in the classified ads of Road Racing World, I found a set of used bodywork, for my bike that I bought.
What was the bike you had?
A Honda 600.
Okay.
And, a set of tires. And then I had this little bit of money left, and the local dealership had a crashed, 1,200-mile F2, 2 years newer than mine, that was crashed and had gotten totaled. And so the guy had left it with the dealership, and I wheeled and dealed with them, and I bought the bike for $1,500. So now I had a second motorcycle, right?
Oh, you got it running?
Yeah. Well, I took it home and just started tinkering with it, and the first thing I did was change the main 30-amp fuse. Boom, fired right up. I got two motorcycles. Jackpot, right?
Wow.
And
the chassis wasn't bent or anything?
Little bodywork things, you know what I mean?
Okay.
But
Yeah,
bodywork was so expensive on those things that if you scratched all the panels, you just about totaled the motorcycle.
Just ride it off.
Yeah. So the upper fairing bracket and stuff like that was bent or broken, but for the most part, bike was pretty solid.
Yeah.
Right. So at the time, the closest racetrack that had racing to us was Little Talladega Grand Prix Raceway.
Okay.
And it was took probably 6-7 hours to drive there.
Oh, man.
Like,
really
it wasn't
far.
an easy drive.
Okay.
Right? I'm 19 years old or 18 years old, and I signed up for this Ed Bargy Racing School. And at the time, there was no such thing as a track day, right? So track days are so prevalent now. It's so easy to go find a way to get on the racetrack. And at that time, you couldn't unless you had a race-prepped motorcycle. So I'm reading through the things and getting rule books sent to me. And okay, you got a safety wire, all these things. And I'm trying to figure it all out, right? And I take my mom's V6 Firebird and put a 3-rail motorcycle trailer on it, and she can't go anywhere all weekend so that I can drive this thing up to the racetrack and go try this racing school, much to my mother's dismay.
Yeah.
Right?
That's awesome.
So A friend from high school rode with me, and we went up, and the first thing I did was drive to the big Talladega Speedway and go, I don't think this is where I'm supposed to be, and have to go find this little racetrack. And that was the start of it, And then my uncle had a motorcycle, lived in Mobile, Alabama, and had made friends with a guy there that raced, Grant Lopez, who ended up becoming like a mentor, a friend and mentor to me, and kind of walking me through the steps. So he was already pretty established in the Southeast racing and was doing really well. And I connected with him through my uncle. And I said, hey, I really want to go try to do this. And he goes, well, I've had plenty of people want to do this before. We'll share some fuel costs and travel costs, and we can travel together. And he figured I'd be around for a race or two. And, the very first race, I had some pretty good success. And the next race did pretty well, and he goes, all right, man, you're going to keep going. You're going to keep doing this. And he kind of took me under his wing and helped me along. And he had a couple of guys that would travel with him and help him work on bikes. And we were riding the same motorcycle, so we had spares that we could help each other with. And it just kept going. We called ourselves Ruckus Racing and traveled around in a Chevy van, absolutely packed full of stuff with 3 or 4 people in it. And yeah, it was adventures.
Yeah. Those are great memories, huh? Like when you look back on them.
Yeah. I would work until end of work day on Friday. I would load my bike up that I had worked on during the week, all week after work, drive it to Mobile, load it into Grant's van. So then I didn't have to drive all the way. We would drive through the night. We'd get to the track at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. If it was raining, we slept under the van. If it was not, we slept on the roof of the van until the gate opened at 7. We'd go in, set up, ride all weekend, and then drive home. I'd get home at 2 or 3 in the morning or later, get up Monday morning and go to work, work my butt off, work on my bike in the evening. It was just trying to survive. But man, you look back at it and it was like, that was just to have fun. There was no money.
That was the purest form of it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
No motivation other than you loved it.
And if you ask me what's different now, that's it. Like now, just the technology and the times and the track day, the quality of track time, like there's so many things that have changed. And now I go to a local club race. Everybody's got travel trailers or motor homes, and there are so few people that show up with a pickup truck and a bike in their back with a couple of the things they need to get through the weekend to just be there and be a part of it.
No more ruckus racing.
No.
With no G. Just racing.
Racing.
You're right. And you know what's funny, man? I can't speak to other sports, dirt track or this, that, but moto's the same way.
Is it?
If you don't have a sprinter, you get laughed out of the pits,
Right.
And in my day, it was like you. What can I cram my bike into, or what kind of trailer can I fashion?
Just got to get there.
Yeah, let's just get there.
Just got to get there, right?
But I feel like I grew up in this, juxtaposition of where you did. I was out in the sticks in the north. You were just in the south.
Right.
But it's the same thing. I had to go to Seattle
from
Montana to get to anything. That was the closest big event.
Gotcha.
Washougal. And anyway, it's funny not funny.
I would think a lot of off-road in your area, though.
Nothing professional. There's good trails.
Yeah.
Some of the most beautiful trails I've ever ridden.
I mean, I could see where it might have even been difficult to get into motocross because there was so much just trail riding available to you, so much off-road.
The only reason I did was my dad's best friend, his kids raced,
Oh, okay.
and they moved to Phoenix to do it.
Right.
Or started when they moved to Phoenix, and he went down to visit them and saw, and he's like, this is awesome. He was the fan. I didn't even know about it, and he got me into it. Anyway, it's just funny. I feel like I lived, because we were born the same year, months apart, and I feel like same era, just
different parts of the
different
world,
parts
right?
of the country.
Right.
So when did was it just from that point kind of a pretty steady progress, or did you have a point where you jumped and went, okay, I'm going all in on this?
It was pretty steady progress, I think. I mean, up and down years, but kind of keeping things going. Like I had a lot of success that first year.
And would you say, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but would you say for road racing, you got started late? Because for moto, that would be like way, way late.
No, I was a late starter.
Most road race kids are like.
But I had no motocross background. I had no background on a motorcycle, really.
Yeah.
So in that way, I was late. And
DS80 in the field, man. That
yeah,
was the background.
That was it, right? And I was showing up, and there were guys that were older than me, and then when you got to pro racing, there was guys considerably younger than me already starting to dabble. You know, there was more and more of the younger making it available for the younger guys, right? And I feel like in my time that really changed a lot, was how much access there was for younger riders. And now kart tracks are regular places to ride these smaller road race bikes that wasn't that available. It just wasn't around. So
what are they riding? I kind of see that. It almost looks like a
there's so many things I don't even know about, but I mean the Ovales are the popular ones right now.
Which is what size of engine?
I think they have a couple that are 160, 190s,
okay,
stuff like that. They're actually pretty fast for how small they are. They're like almost a transition from a pocket bike, they used to call it, to a big bike, right? And there's a couple of different things that are now graduating up, but in Europe it's even crazier how much more things in between are available out there. And here in the U.S., we had basically, in my time, you were, I don't even know what you rode as a mini other than a dirt bike with some street tires on it. And then you went into 125s and 250s, and then you got into the 600s. There wasn't a lot of small bikes available.
Right.
I think the Ninja 250, there might have been a few 400s. The Yamaha had the 400, the YZ 400, or FZR 400. But everything was kind of middleweight and big bikes, right? Yeah. And so I came right into the middleweight, and I kind of felt like the middleweight, when I look back at it, the middleweight bike to me was like the bike you could take out of the dealership as a complete new beginner and ride it at every level. It would teach every skill you need to know from newbie to professional level racing. And to me, that's the 250F. In motocross. Like you can show up and have never ridden anything before, and it is a friendly enough bike to learn, and then you can ride it to every level, right up to the top.
So is that the equivalent of like a 600? Is that
yeah,
what
that was a 600 at
the
the time.
Yeah.
So, and so as far as my progression goes, my goals were pretty simple. What can I do? Where I don't know where this will ever go, and every year the deal just managed to get at least a little better or stay the same, enough for me to survive. And at the time we could chase a little bit of money. Once you became expert, you could chase contingency money, and all the manufacturers paid some.
How long did you from the time you started, you were 19, you said, right?
19.
When did you start racing professionally?
I would say 25.
Okay.
So
like that 5-6 years.
There was 5 or 6 years of at the time when club racing was huge. I did a lot of laps. I did a lot of riding. I had great competition that helped build my craft. And I went from never knowing I would be any more than that and surviving and having fun to I was riding for John Ulrich at the time on what was Valvoline Suzuki. And I happened to grow and move up into the big truck where his top guys were. He always had 2 guys that were his kind of top guys. I moved into that truck at the same time he went professional racing full-time in AMA Pro. And it was kind of like a, luck of the draw. Like, dude, I think anybody who has success, it's hard. It's great to say, yeah, I did this, I did that, I built this, I built that, all of them. Dude, we all have to get lucky, right? And the timing was right.
Opportunity has to be there.
Right. Yeah. And I was able to make a big splash that first season. And that kind of pointed me in a good direction to get my first paid gig. And then I got hurt immediately and struggled for 2 or 3 years. Took a little while. I bounced back, fought through some injuries. And I mean, man.
Were you competitive right away when you turned pro, or were you, because you started later, were you kind of technically behind and needed to tweak some things?
I would say a bit of both. I was competitive, but I was racing at a level with guys that were, I remember, this is Nicky Hayden had only been in pro racing a year. Tommy had been there a few years. Roger came in the same time I did. And I remember going up against Nicky and racing with him, and the recognition that I'm racing with him, but he's playing with more cards than I have. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's got more cards in his hand than I have because of just
Experience.
sheer experience, right? Like, I remember talking to Earl about how many dirt track races, you know what I mean? How many starts, like, heats, semis, finals at every local dirt track they could do 3 nights a week in the South. Like, his racing experience was through the roof. And I still might not even be there where he was at 20 years old. But I at least recognize that, oh man, I gotta put some kind of impetus on catching up on experience in some way. And for me, that was motocross because it was available.
Yeah, that's a thing. There's not a lot of, you said track days just to go practice were hard. Never mind racing, finding races to go do.
And the day I became a professional racer was the least amount of riding I did. When I was on my own, I was chasing 14 weekends a year, practice days when I could. And then I got signed to a pro contract, and there's 30 days of racing, maybe 10 days of testing. I get paid and I ride a motorcycle 40 days a year. And how am I going to catch up on experience?
Yeah.
And
that kind of answers my next question. Because I was going to say there's like these roads to road racing, and a lot of it's dirt track. You know, the Haydens, I think the Bostroms did some dirt. A lot of them. Another name that came to my mind, but it's escaping me. But that's a path a lot of guys take, and I always thought that's kind of odd. Like, how do you go from doing circles in the dirt to?
I mean, at least if you're doing miles, there's the speed where you're getting over 100 miles an hour. You got bikes shaking.
Yeah.
Make a road race bike seem pretty tame.
That's true. Yeah.
But
I think you just answered that there isn't road racing happening, so you have to go race a motorcycle somehow.
And it's expensive.
Yeah.
Where motocross was so available. I have to put a set of tires on it every day I go to the racetrack on a road race bike.
And they're $400.
And if you tip over, oh man, they're not easy to put back together. A motocross bike, I can go fall over 10 times in an evening trying to figure out how to get through ruts, and I might bend a lever or break a lever, maybe bend a set of bars, but for the most part, they're kind of built for this, right?
Yeah.
And so I started going to the local motocross track and just finding people and going, okay, I don't exactly know how it's going to directly correlate, but I have to start building some creativity and understanding this and that. So I was finding people about my pace or a little faster and either trying to keep up or trying to get in front of them and hold them off. And when they came by, figuring out what to do, looking for new lines, like get out of the rut. Like in road racing, we wear out a rut in a racetrack that's 6 inches wide. It never changes.
Yeah.
And when you get into a race and somebody's in the place you need to be, it becomes really easy to not have the creativity to what do I do next? Right? Like how do I trade off things? So motocross was a big part of what I felt like offered me that in an affordable and easy to find way. Just the accessibility was invaluable. And then I think that quite honestly, motocross, if you look to the top level guys, it is so much more technique driven than even road racing. And it just opened my eyes up to things about balance on a motorcycle and things like that. Because I felt like I was an A- or a B+ on talent. But I wanted to learn. I was open to learning new things. And I wasn't afraid to fail to figure it out. Honestly, road racing, I was nearly or was fired a couple of times. And it was like, they call you up and go, man, you're costing me a lot. I was that guy, and I'm like, well, what do you do when you're already trying as hard as you can? And you're like, if I don't go fast, they're not going to give me a job anyway.
Yeah.
So what do I do? Right. So it's like, I hope I make it and figure this out before I either get fired or kill myself trying.
Yeah.
And that was like,
welcome to motorcycle racing.
Yeah. That was the attitude. Right.
Yeah. It's interesting. We talk about the dirt track, and the motocross stuff, and then I look at Valentino Rossi and that setup he's got at his house. Yeah. It's like a dirt road
very
course.
Unique.
What is it? I don't even know what you'd call it.
It looks like dirt track, but it's actually different. It is a complete slurried concrete racetrack with curbs, and then they lay like 2 inches of sand, wet sand on top of it, so that it gets a cushion and kind of changes up. But after 20 minutes of riding, they go scrape it fresh again and start over again. And so they're riding on dirt track tires, but it will get a blue groove on the concrete underneath it for once they blow that off, And it's a very unique a very unique racetrack. I was fortunate enough to get to do a few laps on it, but you know, they're not wearing steel shoes. They're wearing like the Supermoto type boots with the deals that you could wear off on the bottom and replace. And but they're learning a lot about balance and how to get the thing going forward in a low grip situation. So it definitely has some unique things. And then you put that many, you know, world-class competitive riders in any little bowl like that, and you're going to have some exciting stuff, and you're going to learn some new skills.
Well, yeah, just learning throttle control and balance, like you said, and getting on top of the tire to get drive.
Right. Get your feet on the pegs so that you make sure you're maximizing traction.
And do it
like
affordably,
that. Yeah.
You know, or relatively speaking.
Relatively.
I don't know what he paid for that track, but yeah, it's just really interesting. It's so different than moto in that way, where it's hard for you guys to get track time. Kind of like car racing. You know, they all drive go-karts because you can't go take your expensive F1 car or whatever.
It all carries over. It's all got the same ideas. I mean, it's all still there. Motocross teaches these things. You get grip in a different way with a knobby tire and with a rut using a wall that we don't get to use in dirt track or road racing. But the balance and the ideas, a lot of it's there. People like to make it real tricky, you know, and you know, I'd say I do a lot of coaching with a lot of people, and we talk about body position on road race bikes and hanging off the inside. And it's like, you ever think about the story of like how and why that happened, right? Like everybody used to sit up on road race bikes and push the bike down and stay upright and in balance just like anything else, because it's the exception to the rule. And it came down to tire technology and grip, because once everybody could drag the engine cases on the ground, and you found that was the limit, this one guy, Kenny Roberts, goes, well, I think I can change that by changing the center of gravity.
Kenny Roberts was the guy that started doing it?
He was the guy that hung off the inside for the first time and changed the face of road racing. And it was just about, I can cheat because I have grip.
It's like the Bubba Scrub of road racing, huh?
Yeah.
I didn't know it was Kenny Roberts.
And like, but it's the exception to the rule because of the grip level and the technology that you can cheat it, right? Like, if you can hang off the inside of a dirt bike if you have enough grip.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Right?
Yeah.
So it changed a little bit the idea of how to get the bike around the track effectively. But the ideas are still kind of all the same.
Yeah.
Right? Like, balance is key no matter what. And whether it's dirt track, motocross, trials, like road race is the only one where you get this off of center. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's only because I have grip.
Yeah.
You take all my grip away, I'm not doing that. I'm doing the same thing you do.
There's nothing cooler than watching you guys through a turn. And like when I've done some track days, and I wore a knee cup out, and I was so happy. And I'm probably like flailing my leg open to do it, but it's such a cool feeling. But to see you guys laid over and you're dragging a knee and an elbow.
Yeah, see, this guy can't do that. I can't do it. I get made fun of because I have an old school riding style, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it's about balance, right? And efficiency. I don't get too far off the bike because I lose efficiency, but I have enough feel from 30 years of beating my head against the wall at this that I can do it without having to get that far out. I actually feel like I lose some of the feedback I'm looking for if I get that far outside of the motorcycle. I got to stay a little closer to home.
You're just along for the ride when you're that far off, huh? Maybe
I would think so. I think it takes away some of my tools.
It's a cool photo, though.
It is a great photo.
Who are the guys you looked up to, as you got to that level, about to turn pro, turning pro? Who were sort of the guys you were looking at?
See, this is the funny one, right? Like, this is where I think I'm pretty unique because I knew nothing about racing. Like, I was doing it at my local stuff, right? And then I was starting to watch, and I was watching GPs when they had Two Wheel Tuesday, right? And
Moto World, was that still like your guys?
Yeah, I mean, we still had the show, but that was so far out there, right? I was just doing local racing, and I was so busy beating my head against the wall trying to do that. I told a story once, like, I remember watching, what was it, American Sports Cavalcade would show some road racing from time to time. Was that TNN? It was the Nashville Network, I think, that used to do that.
I think you might be right, yeah.
And I remember them showing the Loudon Classic and watching, I remember the names. There was a guy, Russ Katzenberger. I remember watching Jason Pridmore. I remember watching Aaron Yates. And so I knew of them, but I didn't really know any of them that well. And I knew who Miguel de Hamel was because I was in racing, and you see all the ads had Miguel. And one day, it was like, hey, we're going pro racing. And here I go. I line up on a grid for 600 Super Sport where there were 28 paid riders on the grid.
Where was this?
At Daytona.
Oh my gosh.
And 100 people showed up for 80 grid spots, and everyone could make the qualifying cut. 28 paid guys. And I was one of about 6 or 8 Suzukis on the grid. Every superbike rider, every superbike star was on a 600 also. Everybody rode 2 classes. There was one race for everybody back in the day, so everybody rode 2 classes. And I go out at Daytona and qualifying with Jason Pridmore and Richie Alexander, and I'm the only guy in the field just about on Michelin's, and I'm scared to death. And I drafted in front of Jason to start the lap. I told Jason this story. I don't think he remembered. I told this to him a couple of days ago. And I go, I remember going into turn 1 and leaning in there real hard, and I felt something, and I go, oh no. Turn 1, and they've run into the back of me. I'm going so damn slow. And I just went crazy. And I was expecting them to draft by me. And yeah, I was just trying to hook on and gain anything I could to get a lap out. And I finished my lap, and I don't see them, so I do another one. They don't come by, and I finally, after 2 or 3 laps, I look around, and I'm back by myself, and I come around, and I'm essentially on pole. And I'm like, huh? And Miguel and Rich Oliver were going around, and they drafted each other and pipped me, and I ended up 3rd. But I'm on the front row. And the next Suzuki, and Steve Crevier had the number 1 plate on a Yoshimura Suzuki, is on the 4th row.
What? This is your first pro race?
This is my, like, I had dabbled in 1 or 2.
Yeah,
but this was like
first
my
big one.
This was the first one where I'm here for the season and this and that, you know. And man, I'm in front of Nicky Hayden, Curtis Roberts, Doug Chandler, the Boston, like this whole field of superstars. And
yeah.
I'm like, I've never felt more out of place.
Yeah.
You know?
That's crazy.
And then in the race, I ended up winning the 750 race. I wasn't even supposed to ride the 750 class. I filled in for an injured teammate. And then I went out in the 600 race, and I had an incredible race. It was 6 of us that broke away, and I stayed in that top 6 and battled and led a lap and, you know, all this stuff, led part of a lap. And I was in the battle with the real guys, you know, and I think I ended up 6th. I was last in the group.
Okay.
A little inexperience, you know.
What's going through your head in the middle of that? Are you just thinking like, I can't believe I'm racing with these guys? Or were you so detached from like what pro racing really was? You were just like, I'm out here just riding. I'm racing.
No,
like,
I knew,
you're not
I knew
jersey
I was,
reading.
I knew I was punching above my level.
Okay.
Like I had seen what these guys could do, you know, like I knew the lap times. I knew what I was doing. And I was trying to figure out, like, for one, I just didn't want to look like a moron.
Yeah,
I felt
course.
out of place, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to show good for myself and for my team. But the very first practice, we had raced the week before in an amateur race, and I had done really well. And then I rolled out in the very first practice, and I just happened to end up with Miguel, and while he was getting up to speed. And I did quite a few laps with him, and I ended up going about as fast as I had gone the week before, or a little faster. But I had seen a little different way to do it. And I hadn't really put my fingers on how, but I'm like, I come in and I remember Barry McMahon, my crew guy, put my shield up, and I go, like, did you see that? Like, I was riding with Miguel, you know, and I go, if he doesn't go a lot faster than that, I think I can do this, you know, like that. The words came out of my mouth, and out of some dumb luck, I ended up on track with him quite a bit during the course of that. So once we got into the race, and I was like, okay, these guys are not beyond human to me. I was just trying to figure it out. Like, where am I good? Where am I bad? What are they doing better than me? I just was trying to learn. I was all like just taking it in.
Yeah.
Hang on and take it in. And if I get lucky and end up in a great spot, I'm in a great spot. So if I get lucky and end up better than this, then that's fantastic. And every week, I had to learn a lot of new racetracks through the course of that year because I had not done all those national tracks. So I was figuring it out and seeing what they could do and just trying to understand it all, and again, the recognition of Nikki's experience, right? And going, okay, I got to go figure out how to get more of this at this level, because not only had he done all that racing, he's got 2 world-class riders in his own home.
Yeah. Right.
And he gets to go home every day and have TTRs in the backyard or whatever it might be and bang bars with world-class riders, right? So where am I going to find this? How do I find this? In South Mississippi, there's not another person hardly I know that races motorcycles,
right.
So it's just like, how can I go find more?
What did you do?
Motocross. That's
okay.
when the motocross stuff started.
But you stayed in Mississippi. You didn't think, okay, I got to get somewhere else.
I didn't know anything else. Yeah. Then the next year, I did a deal with Honda. I remember meeting Jake Zemke and becoming friends with Jake, and I came out to Paso Robles because he lived with all these dirt trackers, and he had a dirt track in his backyard. And I was so excited to come out and train. And, oh, man, I'm going to feel bad if Jake sees this, but I was pretty disappointed. I stayed with him for 2 weeks, and we rode motocross once or twice. We rode bicycles once. We rode in his backyard one time. And the rest of the time, I felt like we kind of hung out on his green couch with his buddies, and he washed his truck every day. And I was like, man, I came out here to, like,
get after it
and learn some stuff. And I got to see some pieces of it, but it wasn't, it wasn't what I thought it was. And he was a very natural athlete at it. And I was like, okay, well, I see what he's doing here and there, and I'm going to go back and keep incorporating it. But home was home. I was from a small town. I didn't know any different or better, and I didn't leave until I got married.
What were your, so now you've jumped in, you can see that, okay, I'm actually a player.
Yeah.
How does that change your goals? Did you set goals? Did you have any goals, or were you just like, I'm just going to do this and see? But are now you going, you know what, I could win here at this level? Were you looking at Moto GP? Was that something you?
No.
That's still out of touch.
Right now, I still knew, like, I was a little out of my depth, right? So first is figuring out how to win here. Yeah. Right? Like, whatever will come. I just wanted to say, I was more interested in how long can I ride this train? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, life is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, sure, I had dreams of doing all this stuff, but it was like, I gotta learn enough to give myself some stability that I will be here long enough to learn how to win.
Yeah.
Right. So that was goal number one.
So what year did you sign with Arian Honda? Was that 95?
No, Honda was 2000. 99 was my first like AMA Pro season with John Ulrich and Team Hammer.
Okay, gotcha.
Team Valencia and Suzuki. And then Gary Mathers at Honda gave me an opportunity and brought me in, and he offered me Nicky Hayden's spot at Arian Racing. And Nicky moved up to the Superbike program. So you had Miguel and Nicky, Curtis Roberts, and this podunk kid from Mississippi that nobody knew. And, man, one of the most humbling experiences of my life, right? Like, just when you're starting to kind of start doing good. And then I'm in an autograph session in Vegas with this group of 3, right? And you get a real lesson. And, Curtis and his family had this line this long, Miguel. It was like, oh, my God. And then Nicky. This is when he had his little leopard print haircut. And his line went out, down, around the corner, and over to the taxi line. And I remember, late teens, 20-year-old girls crying in line to meet Nicky. And they're like, oh, well, we'll take your poster too since you're sitting with these guys.
Nicky was the full deal, man. He was the whole package.
That little redneck, endearing little country boy, that could ride the hell out of a motorcycle, right?
But he was good looking. He was sweet, like as a human, just a great dude. And incredibly talented. Like he just had it all, If he wasn't so damn nice, you'd want to hate him. But I kind of put him in a category of like Jet Lawrence, where I always joke with Jet, I'm all, dude, just don't drown in panties. Like there are all these girls throwing them at you. And Nikki was the same way, man. Just if I was a gay man, I'd be all over him. So, okay, take me through. So 99 was your first year. You kind of, I want to.
2000.
We got to skip a little bit because you raced for so many years.
Yeah, let's just say 2000 started with a bang.
Okay.
It's my first shot at Honda, right? I'm on the big team.
But before you start here, let me ask you this question. Because American road racing was kind of building and doing, pretty strong.
Yep.
And then there was a point, and I can't remember the year, and maybe it was around here, where something happened. Honda pulled the plug, and American road racing collapsed.
No, that was 10 years later. Still,
10 years. Okay,
that goes along with the financial.
Okay, that was the part of it. Okay,
crisis,
okay,
right?
Good. I want to talk about that when we get to it.
No, this is still big money deals.
Yeah.
Like this was like when I got offered this deal, I was like,
okay,
you're going to pay me money to ride a motor, like enough, that I don't have to have a job too, like, and.
So prior to that, you were still working at home?
I was hustling. I was hustling like contingency money at local races and this and that, whatever. I was just still trying to survive, right? And when John's team moved to pro racing, he was kind of on the bottom tier of the Suzuki lineup. You know what I mean? So his riders, they weren't paying for a salary for his riders. And so he was doing what he could for me, but then somebody comes and offers you, hey, we're going to give you a salary, bonuses, motorcycles, all this stuff. And it was like, wait, so I can spend every day just trying to be a better motorcycle racer. I don't have to go try to hustle to pay any bills, and it was like
game changer,
right? So we get all through and now I'm transitioning from a career on Michelin's to Dunlop. There's quite a few changes going on.
Huge difference,
here. It was different, and it was something that it was another thing I was going to have to throw into it, right? But now I was on the radar of a few people. It was funny because Miguel would ride with me a lot. Nicky and Curtis had a tendency to use him for a tow or something in qualifying, but then he would get behind him and they would sit up and not give him the same thing back. And for me, I was just like, any opportunity to ride with that man, I'm going to learn something. Mm-hmm. I'm just, if he gets me whatever, as long as I'm going forward and getting closer to the front of the field. And so he would spin laps with me, and I got an opportunity to see things, and I got a few hard lessons from him too, but right off the bat, we get to Daytona. I'm riding really well near the front of the race, and there's a big accident with Jamie Hacking, Curtis Roberts, Miguel, Nicky, and Jamie crashed, and there was a small gap, and I'm head down trying to get back to them, and we come out of the old chicane and start up the banking, and when I looked up, there was motorcycles laying down littered on the track, and a guy kind of spinning on the track, and my only goal was to miss him. And he was starting to slide down the banking, and I was already committed to going under him. So I just pinned the throttle, and I leaned over as hard as I could, and I kind of stood it up to take the wheels away from him as he was coming in. I think I kind of brushed his legs, and I kind of looked over my shoulder as I went by him, and the next thing is I heard the impact of me hitting Nicky's motorcycle.
Oh.
And I'm the top of fourth gear, so I go over the bars, take the gas tank off with me, and I'm asleep for all this, right? So I slide a good bit around the banking.
Jeez.
And I remember like a few moments in there where I got up. I was walking when the lights came on, and I saw Nicky run in my direction. And I go, oh, okay, good. He's coming to check on me. The wind's knocked out of me. So I go out into the grass, and I lay down in the grass to just try to get a breath in. And I'm like, man, Nicky's taking a long time. And then I was back to sleep for a while. Right? He was going to his motorcycle. He wanted to get back in the race.
He wasn't coming to check on you at all.
And then the next thing I remember is like the medics putting me on a backboard and hauling me out of there. I ended up having a pretty severe injury to my arm, and I severed my ulnar nerve. So I lost a lot of function in my hand. But we didn't know it for a long time because I got lucky. I was one of 10% of the population that has an extra wire in the wiring diagram below the elbow. So I lost most function and feeling, but I could still move them because I had this extra little wire that from the other main nerve in your arm that kind of fed them enough that they would move, even though they were weak. So it took a long time to figure out why it wasn't healing and have surgery to fix that. And then it took a while for that, nerves heal really slowly. And it basically had to heal all the way down.
Is it good now?
It's still weak, so I still have some weakness in my right hand, but I've been able to get strong. And one thing about motocross is it really helps me get my hands stronger for road racing.
Sure, yeah.
So it's another kind of thing that if I stay on top of it, it helps me in several ways. So yeah, that was like a major injury, and I rode the rest of the season, and I was struggling, but I was doing enough to kind of stay in it. On the Formula Extreme bike, I was still able to get on the podium most weekends. The 600, I was behind a little bit and trying to catch up. And yeah, but most of my learning, is like coaching wasn't a thing in that time. It wasn't like there weren't coaches like there are now.
I remember. Moto was the same.
So we learned from our peers,
Yeah.
right? And so I remember chasing Miguel and seeing him do something and being like, oh, well, if that's what it takes, I'm not sure I'm going to make it. You know what I mean? And then you go, okay, I'm going to try to figure this out.
All you could really learn that way, and trust, I completely relate, because motocross was the same way. There wasn't coaches working on technique and here's how you do it.
Right.
And here's why you do this technique. This is why it works. It was like
YouTube wasn't a thing. It wasn't all broken down for you.
No, and now it was just like, okay, I saw him. He went this fast through here.
Right.
I guess I have to go that fast through there.
Yeah.
So you just learn limits, whether and how far those.
And you got it
pushed.
wrong a bunch, and then you got it right one time, and you go, oh, how do I do that again?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and so there was a lot of that, and again, trying to make it before you survive it and make it, and yeah, you just went to work and said, well, I guess that's what you have to do. I'm going to try to figure it out.
Was there any of these tracks? I mean, I guess I said, was there any? Which track scared you the most? Like Daytona to me looks terrifying. You guys are going so fast, stuff like that, where you're coming into the high bank.
Daytona wasn't too bad because we were on 600s for me at the time. Okay. I had, super bikes rode around there, and the big bikes were pretty scary. But and that got worse with time when they repaved it. Man, Daytona got really scary when they repaved it because I was on a super bike then.
What?
No, once you had maximum grip, when I came to pro racing in '99, they were riding on such hard tires. The super bikes were going around the banking like 60% throttle because they just spin all the way around. And like spinning sounds scary, but it wasn't really that bad. You just weren't going forward, So it was like, okay, I'm just going to try to. Everybody just has to get around the banking, right? And then when I got to Superbike and we started getting bikes going close to 200 miles an hour or a little over, and holding it 100% throttle around the banking, it was perfectly smooth and no feedback, nothing to tell you what was going on. Then you start going, man, that wall looks close, really close, right? And you're like, that was scary to me.
Had to be, dude. I mean, like those races, like we talked about Nashville Supermoto. I mean, we're doing 100,
right?
But you'd be so G'd out, the foot pegs would be bumping the ground and sparking, and I'm just thinking, dude, if I go into this wall,
it's gonna hurt.
I'm done. I mean, right. I'm gonna be. In fact, Kerry's brother died that way.
And we saw a lot of injuries like that too. I remember Michael Barnes crashing a Formula Extreme bike at Las Vegas at the Speedway, right at the start-finish line, and bouncing off the wall, and ruined his leg and a portion of his career. Miguel got hurt at Loudon, New Hampshire. There was quite a few people that got hurt at tracks like that. We all had, even at nationals, yes, we had tracks that weren't ideal, but quite honestly, every one of them I had seen worse in club racing.
Is that right?
And so it was like
the concrete walls always for me was the thing. Like your road courses. I mean, you showed me that one crash, which I wanted you to send to me. We can play it. It's radical, but yes, that hurts. But if there's a concrete barrier,
oh, dude,
it's a different.
We need space. That's the thing about road racing and what limits us on some racetracks is because cars like walls. They don't want the cars to get up, down, whatever. If they bounce and just kind of slide around, they fix their car. When we hit a wall, it's our body hitting the wall. Mm-hmm. So we always need a lot more space, and that starts becoming part of the constraints. And the faster we go with technology, which is more about tires than anything, the more space we need.
Is that right? The tires are kind of the limiting factor.
Always.
You guys went through I remember all the electronics phase, which I feel like now motocross is into. where that's becoming, it's funny to watch guys instead of working on carburation or whatever, they come in, they plug it into a laptop, and guys doing this.
Yeah.
And you guys have been doing that for 20 some
time.
years. Yeah.
Long time. Yeah, but I mean, like now, like Supercross is an enigma too because the bikes are so fast. Like honestly, at this point, the 250 should just about be the premier class because you can't build obstacles big enough for a 450. Like I can go to Pala, the local track, and I can stop at the apex, you name it, and I can jump it from a standstill. I don't even need to run at it. Nobody hits anything full stick anymore, because the bikes are way, way, way too powerful. So, I like the training of a 450, but I probably am faster and enjoy riding a 250 probably more because I get to actually hold the throttle on and do some things like that.
Yeah,
so.
I agree with you 100%. So take me up to the economic collapse because that's where kind of things go squirrely with the sport.
And that kind of feeds into my story because it was a turnaround thing, right? Like I had a few years there that I struggled in those mid 2000s, early 2000s with injuries and just being that guy on the track trying so desperately to figure it out. And
were you crashing a lot?
Yeah, I was crashing. You name it. It was everything. I had some speed and some potential, but I was making a lot of mistakes too. And then I got like fired, and Jason Pridmore helped save my career and gets me onto a 750 Suzuki. I win a championship and kind of buys me some time.
Was that the first title you'd won?
That was my first title in 03.
Okay.
And then the next 2 years, I ended up in a privateer superbike, not a privateer superbike, factory supported, but it wasn't like the factory bikes at the time that were coming in from Japan as a race bike ready to go. And so we were kind of up against it pretty hard, and I was showcasing the best I could, and I was the top guy that was not, I dabbled and beat a factory bike every once in a while. And when I did, it helped really, help my brand a lot that I was able to battle with them on something less. A little bit of an underdog story. Mm-hmm. And then Honda came back around and brought me back into the fold, and I went into Arian racing again in what was Formula Extreme, which was very important to Honda in those years. And so I managed
people
to
that
do
maybe don't know, there was 600 Superbike and then Formula Extreme, right?
Well, at this time, Formula Extreme had become like 600 Superbike. So you had stock 1,000 and 1,000 Superbike. You had 600 Supersport, and Formula Extreme was like a modified Superbike. 600. And it was really important that Honda win this class because they had won it with Miguel for several years and Jake, and they wanted to continue in that class winning. But they decided to go full-time Superbike racing, so they really put a huge emphasis that Kevin, hey, you got to go win this championship. And I came in, and I was able to do it. And I was able to do it punching, again, what I felt like was a little above my weight because you had the full power of Yamaha decided this was going to be their proving grounds before they went Superbike racing. So they did this class with the full effort of everything
Who did they have?
YMUS had. That was with Jason DeSalvo and Eric Bostrom. And I struggled a little bit the first part of the season, and then I started kind of steamrolling at the end, and we came into the last race, and it was me against Eric, and I managed to win the championship. And then they went Superbike racing, and the next year, we were able to kind of dominate the class the next couple years. And then things started to kind of go south for me. I'd been in Honda for a while. I'd won 2 championships and a lot of races, and management just didn't see me as their guy for the future. I was already not young.
How old were you at that point?
I was early 30s.
And that would have been what?
08.
08, okay.
And I was still desperately trying to get my shot on a real superbike. And
it seems
their
crazy
vision
that
wasn't me.
Yeah, it seems crazy that you're now multiple titles, tons of wins, and
I just wasn't the vision of what they had. And I was already, so they ended up bringing in Neil Hodgson from Europe because he was a world champion and a lot of superbike experience. And I had felt like I had checked all the boxes of what they needed from me for this opportunity, and it just didn't come around. So I was desperately looking for anything, and I got a lucky call from Keith McCarty to come race for Yamaha on a Yamaha Superbike. During this contract period is when things really started to change in pro racing. And it had been offered, I think, to someone else before me who had turned it down because the money wasn't that good. And so it was offered to me. I never even asked. I didn't know what the money was. I was like, oh, Yamaha Superbike, I'll take it.
You just said yes.
I said yes, I'll take it. So I was just excited and to get this shot with the team with a factory Superbike. And at the same time, AMA had decided to sell off the rights to racing, and this is when the DMG group got it.
Okay.
Daytona Motorsports Group got it. And this all was kind of okay, this is coming, and there's class structure changes coming, and they had a different idea of how they wanted to go racing.
They being DMG?
DMG.
Yeah.
And once they had the rights and the tools to do it, like there's this whole political thing that kind of happened also because there was a guy who got put in charge of DMG who AMA Pro had fired years before. And he had sued the AMA and won like a $12 million lawsuit. And at that time, all the presidents of all the manufacturers were on the board of directors at AMA. So they all hated his guts.
Well, who was it? Not Whitlock.
No. If you wouldn't ask me, this is the problem with being 50.
Yeah. No, I understand the problems of being 50. Trust me. I can't remember a name to save my life. If it comes back to you, tell me, but I'm curious who that is.
They put him in charge, and that already put all the manufacturers on the back foot. And then he also was anti-manufacturer. And he has this idea like, okay, we're going to make everything the bike of tomorrow. We're going to have every manufacturer, like we're going to do performance balancing, and we're going to put everybody in one class, and it's going to be middleweight because at Daytona, we can race middleweights. At Daytona, we can't ride super bikes there because they're too fast. And they had this plan and this vision, and it went very hard against the manufacturer's vision because they're like, hey, we determine what we're going to race because we're going to race what we want to sell.
Yeah.
Right? And he was like, no, I'm going to do it my way. I don't care if there's no manufacturers because I'm going to bring in sponsorships like NASCAR from outside of the industry, and we're going to care about teams, not manufacturers, and take care of these teams. And, of course, nothing on anybody's part played out the way it was supposed to. And when the manufacturers started to pull back, not only did they pull back on the race teams or go home, it was also every event was the Kawasaki Superbike Shootout, the Honda Classic, every manufacturer sponsored events, and that's how the tracks paid sanctioning fees and all this stuff, and all that stuff started to pull back. Oh man! Right? So everything just starts disappearing, and nobody's getting along. Even the riders in DMG aren't getting along. We're going to do it this way. And we know this from car racing. I remember getting into this just insane argument at Daytona because we're tucked in and we can't hardly see anything, and our necks are killing us with our chin against the gas tank. And they wanted to take the guy off the ground with the flag and put him in the tower. Now the stands are empty. We don't have radio communication. None of us could see the checkered flag because it's all these a checkerboard background of stands, and this guy standing up there waving a flag, and we are doing everything we can to see out of the windscreen and see the start-finish line.
Yeah.
Much less a guy in a tower up above
you're not
it.
Getting up that high.
And so we were getting into these ugly arguments with the people running the series, and it started like that, and it really didn't get much better for a long time. But this also became my era, right? So manufacturers pulled back. Unfortunately, I had success before they all went away, right? Yeah,
and thank God, or that might have been the end for you,
If I had gotten my dream at Honda, my career would have been done 10 years earlier, right? Yamaha, Suzuki kind of stayed the course. They kept it going. And the other guys dabbled a little, maybe, right? But there was 2 years there that they were all still involved, and I had success against them when they were involved, thank God. Right, just for my own personal, I didn't just have success because they left, but it was kind of the part where things started to really ramp up for me. But I also think I matured. It was just late, We were talking about the all-time win record earlier, and that I've had it for a while. And Bobier just tied me for this at 89 wins a couple weeks ago. The hardest part about this for me is Cameron Bobier, I think, is 34 years old. My first year at Yamaha Superbike, I was 34 years old.
Well, I told you, I said we need to pump you full of methamphetamines, tape you up, and get you out there for one more win. But
from 34 till now, I won like 70 races.
Yeah, right.
And so he's 34 with 90 almost now.
Yeah,
he's got a long career ahead of him still. Yeah. Right. Like I did my best work in my late 30s.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I matured at that point. I think, and like 06 on was kind of like when things all fell into place for me.
For you as a racer.
And as a racer. And so, you know, when you sit back and you go, man, you know, if I had done good earlier in life, man, I would have done anything to be a Moto GP world champion. But, you know, I got one look at riding a Moto GP bike in 2011.
Yeah, I got it on here. I'm going to talk to you about it. Before we move past this, and the reason I'm really curious about this, because road racing in America is a cautionary tale to our sport.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of things that people would like to see happen. I'm a big proponent of a straight 250 class. Mm-hmm. When everything went 4-stroke, you know, they tried to say that a 125 2-stroke was competitive with a 250F and a 250 2-stroke versus a 450. Maybe even back then that was ridiculous. But
technology's changed.
Technology has, you know, gone through the roof, right? And so a 250 2-stroke right now, in my opinion, matches up pretty well with a 250F race bike.
Okay.
And they're always talking about, well, we want to make it fair so the factories don't have this huge advantage and we want privateers to be able to be competitive. Okay, here's your chance. Make it a straight 250 class and make the premier class open. Run wherever the hell you want, you know? Because I think a factory team, a factory rider is still going to choose a Star Yamaha over a YZ250.
Right.
Particularly if you put some limitations on it, you know. Maybe you say you got to leave the cylinder and head stock, right?
Okay.
And we've done some comparisons. We did a video on YouTube about it, and the 250 2-stroke makes more power in stock form than that 250F.
Yep.
But they're harder to ride. They're more tiring.
They are so much harder to ride.
They don't get the traction, the grip. You know, there's a lot of things they don't do well.
Right.
But you could be a privateer kid.
You can't lug one.
No. You could be a privateer kid, though, and buy 3 of those.
Right. For the cost
of one race bike, and you really can't build what Star has, not even close. Right. So if you really want to make this interesting and fans would love it, like, you know, so I've been pushing this, kind of nudging the AMA hard. They voted on it once years ago, it got shot down. Jeremy Albrecht at AMA, I said, hey, look at this video we did, you know, what do you think? All the comments are like, there's hundreds of comments. Yes, you know, do it. This would be so great. Fans would just eat it up. Right. You'd make it easier on privateer kids. And he's like, yeah, it's probably not going to happen. And I'm like, man. And I asked him why. I didn't get a response.
More data. I think that's the key for you. You got to get a couple of top-level guys on these things. You know what I mean?
Well, but at the end of the day, again, I think it comes back to looking at what happened with road racing. Yep. If the AMA goes, hey, guys, we're going to do this, they tell the manufacturers, well, Honda, who said they'll never make 2-strokes again.
Right.
Suzuki, who doesn't make one. Kawasaki is about to launch one back, which is phenomenal, but I don't know what.
Right.
But here's all it takes is a couple manufacturers to go, we don't make those. We don't want those. And
if you fuel inject them, do you change everything again? I don't know. When people start putting technology back into it, if you allowed that, you may be making adjustments pretty quick. You know what I mean? Technology again. Yeah. Fuels, different things like that, oils, like when people put an emphasis on it because now somebody can profit. If KTM thinks they can get an advantage out of it, or Yamaha, and they put a lot of effort into that bike, it might not be so fair anymore. Yeah. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, anytime we've ever had to come up against something like that, it's going to be so much about the data you present. You know what I mean? But you would think for even just a popularity vote, it would be huge to have something that interesting. Because I mean, I still see where guys, you know, if anybody dares show up with a 2-stroke, half the people are following it and watching it, just nostalgic.
Totally.
Right.
And the guy doesn't even have to make the main. He's still a fan favorite.
He's still going to be a popular one.
But this is motorcycle racing in general, road or dirt, is so manufacturer supported. You know, it isn't like NASCAR. Chevy isn't funding these races, right? But here,
well, they're the only people that have anything to gain from it. Honestly, we don't have outside people, so all the politics are going to come from within because they are the only people who have the opportunity to profit from motorcycle racing.
Yeah, you take energy drinks and or the manufacturers out, and it collapses. Honda, the road
the
racing.
Energy drinks don't need this. They are.
No.
It's popular enough.
Yeah.
That they go, okay, we can do this.
But it's the right demographic for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I just think it's really interesting to watch what happened, and so just to kind of follow through that, what did happen? Because it was kind of struggling for a while, and now Moto America, bought the rights to it.
Yeah, so they actually, it didn't come easy to them either, and if I remember the story correctly, one of the ways that they did it is some people came in and said, look, we want to see it grow again, and how do we do that? And they were people who had some long standing in racing and wanted to see American racing thrive and us start building some people to go across the pond again was the idea. And so DMG wasn't going to give it up easy. So I think what they did, if I remember correctly, was they went to the manufacturers, which was primarily like Honda, Kawasaki, and said, what do we have to do to get you back involved? And at the time, it was like, okay, if you make it World Superbike rules the same as the rest of the world, where we know we can be competitive, we know where we stand, sure, we'll do it. So they used that stance to kind of go strong arm the rights to racing and get them back away from DMG and back into these new hands. And I don't think it was a very cordial affair to make this happen. And then Moto America gets it, and they have, some really good personalities that people trust in racing. The manufacturers, they at least they can call and get an audience with people at all the manufacturers because they're respected within the community. But then they made racing more expensive to do that. And then those guys didn't come back like they promised they would.
Oh.
Now, this was the other thing that happens in all this is when the recession happens, there's a lot of people that end up getting either early retired or just retired, right? So you've got the presidents of these manufacturers moving out and the next guy moving up, and then maybe he gets moved out because this recession was tough for quite a few years. And then they started not bringing up necessarily people from within, but sidestepping. I think people were coming from Acura, or they're coming from the car industry and different places and moving into high, powerful positions in motorcycle manufacturing, right? And now you've got someone who the media is changing, the outlet for marketing is changing quickly with social media, and you also have a guy who's never been a part of this company when racing was part of the DNA of this company, right, with multi-million-dollar budgets.
Right.
And let's be honest, he's got to answer to somebody. And if there's no direct ROI and you go spend millions of dollars in racing, you're going to put your head on the chopping block for that? It's probably not going to be an easy thing to do when you don't understand much about the demographic and how it's all worked and how it was driven before.
Yeah. Right.
And so now we find ourselves begging them to get back to just contingency so that we can, as a cheaper way to get involved where you pay out only if there's results on your machine, but it encourages people to ride your machines and things like that. So, Yamaha's always kept that pretty strong with their Blue Crew programs and stuff like that. Now Honda's coming back into road racing and offering a pretty substantial one there. Amateur racers can't get it yet, I don't think. We're not seeing it as spread out as it used to be. Man, in my early pro days, there was a handful of guys that made a living out of going club racing and collecting money. Yamaha used to pay $2,000 in 4 classes. You could make $8,000 a weekend if you had an R6 and an R1, and you went and just chased that money wherever it was, and guys were making 6 figures, paying for their motorcycles.
The early 90s, well, the 90s, I guess, in general, it was all motorsports was crazy for contingency. You could do great. And I think that's interesting just hearing you talk about that. But like all these manufacturers, the Japanese ones anyway, that is something they do. You could be the director of off-road motorcycles, and then after a certain amount of time, for no particular reason, hey, we're going to move you over here to cars, and you're going to do marketing. They want you to learn all the different facets of the company.
Right.
Better or worse, I think it's crazy a little bit. I think specialize and be really good at what you're good at, but they do that. They move people around, and like what you're saying is exactly right. You bring in a guy who has no interest in racing, doesn't know about it, doesn't know the history, coupled with layoffs where the people that do are gone.
Well, I felt like Japanese culture was about like you spent a career at a company. So learning all those facets of all the different places prepared you for management at the top level.
Yeah, I suppose I
But
see that.
they're just their customs. You spent a lifetime at a company. You
Right.
didn't jump companies around.
Yeah, you leave, you better fall on the sword. And,
Right.
dishonor
Somewhat.
your family.
Somewhat, but yeah, there was a big turnover, and a lot of people turned over quickly, and now you got people who are just trying to catch up. And yeah, they're excited about racing, but whoa, spend a bunch of money there? Hang on a second.
Yeah.
Like we can do all these other things, and it's more in line with whatever else, right? But for manufacturers and motorcycles, racing has been the mainstay for a long time, and now times have changed a bit.
Do you think, if you're any of these manufacturers, you look at, okay, Supercross racing is probably the biggest off-road motorcycle series there is, right? So they're going to spend a lot of money, and they do.
They do.
If you're looking at road bikes, and we sell a good number of off-road motorcycles here in the U.S., I think. I don't have specifics, but I know that we do. If you look at road racing, Moto GP is the pinnacle.
Right.
So are they looking at spending money there because that's the most publicized version of road racing versus how many street bikes do they sell here in the U.S.? Versus
I think it's a large market.
It is,
but
yeah. Because I know the third world is really big for them. Scooters and like
a lot of small displacement motorcycles over there for sure. And there's stuff that we don't ever see here that's over there, right?
I don't know. I'm just curious how they look at it and justify money spent where.
I don't necessarily understand all of it, but I would say that, just like Formula One, like MotoGP and Formula One, prototype racing. And then you've got whatever sports car series and World Superbike, which is your production bike that you can go see the bike that you can buy and how it competes, right? But so much of it is brand awareness, I feel like, and they play on loyalties of branding and stuff like that.
Image marketing.
Right? Image marketing in that way. And so, MotoGP is where they're driving technology that takes a while, but it does all trickle down and end up in the production machines. And, why do manufacturers spend so much money in Formula One and in MotoGP? I'm not really sure, but it is the pinnacle of their performance, right? Yeah. Where, in here we can get into a lot of other discussions about some changes that are coming, because I see some big changes coming here, but
in American road racing?
In road racing worldwide.
Okay.
MotoGP, they're about to slow them down, smaller displacement bikes.
Is that right?
And in my opinion, I don't think that the manufacturers will ever allow a production bike, a super bike, to go faster around a racetrack than a MotoGP bike, a prototype machine. It's never going to happen. So they may have to slow down superbike racing, however they decide to do it. I mean, and whether it's displacement, like right now, next gen Supersport, you have nearly every manufacturer. We call it middleweight, right? But they're 900s now, Superbikes are 1,000. You've got 900s that are cheaper technology motorcycles. We now have the technology to do the performance balancing that didn't work before. And now we can do so much with a spec of ECU and electronics and torque mapping that you're just building out chassis and parity that way. And we're kind of working our way where I feel like next gen Supersport is going to be the superbikes here very, very soon. And for one, because we can't compete with the MotoGP bike on lap time. And they've got to figure out how to slow those things down. They're going 230 miles an hour. Like, they don't have enough space.
I know, it's insane.
But the technology, quite honestly, is the lap time going to change much? I don't know, because the tire technology is so good, and that's really going to be the driving force of how fast they go. It's all about tires. And even that, with the tire technology, the corner speeds get higher. You still need more space.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't care what you are. Bad things happen when you're going over 200 miles an hour and you start falling off with your body on the ground.
Yeah, speed kills, dude.
So.
There's a trauma formula that's based on speed, and the higher the speed, the worse the trauma outcome. It's a,
I don't always feel that way about road racing, because if you have enough space,
yeah,
you know what I mean. Like
you can slide right and dissipate it.
Those crashes at higher speeds, typically you get to the ground in a slower way. You know what the number one thing to me that I can equate to injury or pain is altitude. Like assuming there's no wall to hit, right?
Okay.
Even sitting upright and tucking the front from upright, if you were standing up and I kick your legs out from under you and you fall on your elbow on hard ground, it's going to hurt, no matter what. Where if you're already kneeling down and I push you over, it's not such a bad deal.
It's the high side that flings you up 10 feet and then you come down.
Anything from here up, it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
You add forward momentum, it's going to hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just talking based on a paramedicine trauma triage criteria. Like how fast were you going?
Yeah. Well,
Not assuming you were wearing a helmet and leather.
I think the bigger thing is how fast did you stop?
Yeah, that is the bigger thing. Okay, so buttoning that up, what do you think they'll bring the Moto GP sizing down to?
I think they've already decided it's going to be like 850s in 2027, I believe, is the year that's changing. So I just can't imagine that that's going to change without some other wholesale changes happening, to keep the balance of the sport. And this is all my foreshadowing. You know what I mean? Like I don't have any. No one will say that this is what's coming. Right?
Makes sense.
I'm just trying to read the writing on the wall somewhat.
Yeah, you're not going to take the premier, division of racing and then have,
and quite honestly,
production racing, quote unquote, going faster, bigger bikes.
Right now in production racing, right? Like some bikes are starting to go away. The R1 is not being sold. Yamaha's R1 doesn't sell in Europe anymore. And a big part of it is like EU5 plus, right? You start making more stringent, what do you call it? The
emission stuff.
Emission stuff to present a new motorcycle, right? That has the same performance with more restrictions. The development cost is through the roof, and you have to sell enough of them to make that happen. You can't. I don't think they are going out there with the idea of, I'm going to sell an R1 that's slower than the previous model, because nobody's going to go to the dealership and buy it, even if I put some fancy bodywork on it. Performance-wise, nobody wants that. So the development cost to make a faster motorcycle than the one that's out there now, under harder restrictions, is just getting to be where they're either going to price themselves out, where now you've got a lot of the European manufacturers offering models that are 30,000 plus. Who can afford these things? You can't sell enough of them.
Yeah.
Right? So that's part of where I think the middleweight stuff's going to come in, because right now it's the European manufacturers that are driving the 1000 bus more than anything, in my opinion. And Yamaha's racing a 10-year-old motorcycle. Honda's has got some updates, but for the most part, it's a pretty old motorcycle. And they're not developing new equipment, right? So you start getting down to the cheaper classes, and we can create parity and stuff like that. It starts getting easier to do, but I don't think there's a lot of 1000s running out the door in the numbers that we used to, the way it was.
Well, no, I mean, the smaller bikes they've gotten so fast.
Well, I mean,
you don't need all that. It's cheaper to insure the smaller bike you go if you're riding on the street.
I think the R3, the R7, and now I believe the R9 is going to be kind of along that line. The R9's got some pretty killer technology in it, and a triple motor that's pretty popular and been around for a while. And at $12,500, it's pretty good steal for the performance that you get. Or you can go get an R1 and spend $25,000 on it.
Very few people.
You get a lot more technology out of that R1, but you have really no way to use it on the public street.
Great stuff. Okay, we're going to jump back into your career when you really start getting on a hot streak here, but we're going to first take a Troy Lee Designs timeout. Stick around, guys. Back with more Josh Hayes.
Dunlop. There is a reason every AMA championship in the past decade was won on Dunlop tires. They are the best. Choose the best performing tire and a brand that has never wavered in their support of our sport. Choose Dunlop. Pro Circuit. Pro Circuit products are designed with one goal in mind: winning. Through passion and hard work, Pro Circuit has operated the most successful 250 team in the history of the sport. They use that same formula when developing exhaust, engine, and suspension parts for every brand. When only the highest level of performance is acceptable, trust Pro Circuit.
Seat Concepts prides themselves in offering the best seat foam and cover products available for off-road, moto, dual sport, adventure, quad, and street motorcycles, all at affordable prices. So whether you're looking for better performance or more comfort, choose a superior American-made product from Seat Concepts.
Something from nothing. That's what Nihilo Concepts is about. It starts with a spark, an idea, a concept, which leads to a design, and finishes with engineered excellence with the highest quality products created with durability in mind. All our products are made in the USA at our state-of-the-art facility in Stuart, Florida. Whether you are a weekend warrior, ride for fun, or at the highest level of competition, Nihilo Concepts offers innovative titanium, aluminum, and carbon fiber parts for your dirt bike. We offer a wide variety of products that you can customize to your liking. Browse our site for foot pegs, brake tips, engine components, specialty tools, frame grip tape, lever grips, carbon fiber components, motor stands, our secondary on-switch, plus much more. Head to NihiloConcepts.com and see for yourself why factory teams like Red Bull KTM, Rockstar Husqvarna, Troy Lee Designs Gas, Orange Brigade, Club MX, KLM Gas, and some of the fastest riders in the world choose Nihilo Concepts.
Welcome back. That was the Troy Lee Designs Timeout. Those guys have got all of their new summer 2025 line out, so check that out. Paint department, if you want to get some lettering done, some numbers done, mountain bike gear, whatever you need, Troy Lee Designs have it. And awesome stuff. Love those guys. All right, let's just jump back in here. 09, signed with Factory Yamaha, right?
Yep.
And this kind of was the beginning of a hot streak for you.
Yes.
So take us through it. How was you were second that season?
Well, let me say,
and you finally got your shot on Superbike.
I'm kind of known now, right? Like as the Yamaha guy. So this was the beginning of that, but it didn't start all roses.
Yeah, I didn't realize you had so many years prior to
a decade of beating my head against the wall in pro racing, trying to make it right. And then I get this shot, and one, I wasn't their first choice, but again, it was like not a lot.
Who was? Do you remember?
I think it was Jamie Hacking. And I think he had turned it down because it was like his Kawasaki deal. He was like, I'd have to like win the championship in 10 races to make enough bonus money to match my salary over here. And for me, it was like, again, Honda had let me know I wasn't their guy. And so I was kind of out. And they called, and I'm like, yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Now, the tough part is, again, here I go. I'm going to come over. I tried to do everything right over here, and I wasn't the guy. I get moved over. I come over to Yamaha, and then my teammate is going to be Ben Bostrom, like world-renowned, super popular, had just won the Super Sport Championship for Yamaha and was their guy, right? And I'm an outsider.
Second most likely to Nikki to drown in panties.
Probably, yeah. So I come in, and Ben's my teammate, and we start testing on this full-blown superbike. Now, this is the first year of the new R1 with the cross-plane crankshaft, the unique sound, and everything about it's new. And when we showed up at the first test, we had all the parts on it to make it a superbike, right? And Ben's doing pretty good. I feel like I'm kind of struggling. I'm trying to integrate into the team, and like there's a lot of things happening. We go to the first race. Ben gets on the podium. I'm racing for 8th. And I feel like I'm going to crash. We go to Barber. Ben gets on the podium. I'm racing for 8th, and I feel like this is a nightmare for me. So we go to Road Atlanta, which was like home for me. No matter what, we go to that racetrack. I've been able to figure out how to get a result, and I've taken and kind of figured my way through things, and just because I know what to expect and how to extract a lap. I go out, and I remember Melissa wasn't with me that weekend. She was racing in Jennings, Florida. I'm on my own, and I go out, and I have just a miserable morning, and I'm completely lost. And this is like my first time in a big team. So I have a crew chief, team manager, chassis guys, engine guys, electronics guys, suspension guys, specialists in every area.
There's a pressure that comes with that a lot of people don't understand. I mean, when you go from a smaller team where it's like you kind of like we're working together to try to underdog story, right?
2 or 3 of you, yeah.
To all of a sudden everyone's looking at you going, why aren't you doing better?
Right.
It's
like everything's here,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I come in whatever that morning, and I'm distraught, and I'm talking about my problems, and the chassis guys got ideas, and the engine guys got ideas, the electronics guys got ideas, suspension. I have no idea which one's going to fix this thing, and I'm completely lost. And I went into the truck, and I had a complete ugly cry meltdown, like
scream cry,
dude. Like it was ugly, like just ugly snot everywhere. It was bad.
Okay.
And I get my shit together, and I come back out to my new crew chief, and I go, it was Jim Roach, and I go, Jim, I know this is crazy. I said, but I've been at it for a while now with this thing, and I don't know what to do. So will you just turn this thing into like a super stock bike with a big engine? Like put everything back as stock as you can of what we would expect a super stock bike to be to go around this racetrack. Like all the triple clamps and all the stuff, just put it all in the stock settings. Stock link on the back,
huge change.
Just okay. Make it as, with the electronics, it wasn't easy, but make it as close to a stock bike as we can. And let me just see what I can learn. Like, like right now, I'm racing for 8th, and I feel like I'm going to kill myself. I'm
what
watching
are you
my
feeling?
teammate. Just nothing's working. Nothing's making sense to me.
Okay.
And so I'm not able to extract anything out of it. And I'm like, I'm lost. I don't even know what a Yamaha's supposed to feel like, And I feel like we've put so many parts at this thing that who knows, right? And he was kind of like, well, I go, look, what's the worst that could happen? I'm going to finish 10th? Like, seriously. How bad could it be? And he was like, all right, you got it. So the guys did it. And
did you have another practice session?
I did.
Okay.
This was after the first day, so I had qualifying 2.
Okay.
And I roll out in qualifying 2, and about 3 or 4 laps in, I had a water line break, and I high side over the bars. One of the biggest crashes I've ever had, probably.
Is that the one you showed me? With the
No.
Oh,
this
okay.
was. But it threw me out of the seat, and I slid down the front of the motorcycle and ran over myself with the bike. So, it was wild. The front tire had burned all the skin on my neck because it had gotten into my neck when I slid down the thing, and the brake discs were hot, and I had a spot here and a spot on the gasket of the helmet where the front tire had burned those two as it took all this skin off my neck. So I'm in the medical center, and Jim's walking. He walks into the room, and I'm sitting there, and they're taping me up and everything, and he's you can see he's kind of in there with his shoulders low, and I said, Jim, is the bike going to be ready for the race? And he didn't say a word. He just turned around and bolted. He didn't expect me, I guess, to ride.
Yeah.
So he bolts out to get the guys ready. And then, we get out there, we start the race, and I ended up finishing 4th and battling with Jeff May for the podium. This was a huge step, right?
Yeah.
By just going back to square one. So we didn't really change anything. I rode the morning warm-up. I was having a tough time. My neck was on fire, and I had this clear dressing on it that would slap on it on the back straightaway. I was pretty uncomfortable. But I managed to get 2 4th-place finishes. This is dramatically different than the 8ths before, right? So we go to a 2-day test, And in 2 days of testing, the first day all we did was clickers. The next day I tested some Superbike parts. And then we started to make some progress. And each of the parts started to get integrated back into the motorcycle. But I started to understand how each component played its role. Mm-hmm. So then, at this time, this year, this was Matt Mladen had been the man for 10 years. He had been the force of Superbike racing for 10 years. And he had announced this was his final year. But he was like 6 or 8 races on the trot right off the beginning, right off the bat. And we went to Road America, and I was having, like, on pace, I was having an incredible weekend. I had seen Matt in practice, who was always a bully on the track in practice. Okay. And he and I had done like 3 laps together, and it had just been brake duel, brake duel, brake duel until he ran us both off the track. I ran us off the track. Like, it was just like, I had this big smile in my helmet because this was my coming of age. I'm riding with the champ, and I have the speed to do it. And he was probably as frustrated as hell with me, but I'm just like, all right, like, I'm there. And then we had some dodgy weather, and I had the 2 worst races ever. Like, I knocked down a friend and crashed us out of both races. And like, it was a nightmare. Get through there, we get back to Sonoma, and then I ended up, like, everybody had a shit day, and my day was just okay. And I went from like P5 to everybody's pace just went off a cliff, and mine just stayed the same. And I win the first Superbike race for Yamaha in 19 years. You know what I mean? It was.
And like, this was what year?
2009.
2009. Okay, yeah.
So, like, right place, right time. All the things happen. I'm a hero at Yamaha. I'm the first guy to beat Matt.
He was a Suzuki guy, right?
He was a Suzuki guy for all that time, and Suzuki had dominated the championship for years. So I nab one away from him, right? And actually, I think Road America came after that because Larry won a race there, Larry Pegram. But I thought, I'm there, and then I had a miserable weekend. The first one at Sonoma, I knew I got a gift. The next day, I think I got 4th or 5th. It wasn't too bad, but I wasn't on the podium. And then things started to click and really start to roll. And before it was all said and done, I ended up doubling like 3 weekends in a row or something like that. And it was funny because I went from a guy not even on the radar to the favorite for the championship overnight. I finished second in the championship after that miserable first half of the season. And then, we rolled out, and in 10, 11, 12, it was like I had Tommy Hayden and Blake Young and a few guys that were my like rivals. But, man, I got on a good run, won a lot of races, and kind of had my time in racing there, for quite a few years.
Was there one of those championships that was better than other? Or give me some highs and lows from those. I mean, it sounds like it was a lot of highs. I was reading through the stats of like the number of poles you had, and like
I had a good run there. Yeah, like 2010 was, getting your first one was difficult, and Tommy was kind of the guy. And Tommy Hayden. And so he and I battled, and it came down to last race of the season. And I remember it was a rain race in Birmingham. And I was just kind of marking him, and we were riding around in like 3rd and 4th, and I was just sitting on his wheel, and I knew I was pretty safe if I was there. And this young Canadian kid, he bombs me and on the brakes down into Charlotte's Web, and then we're on the way out, and he high sides to the moon and runs me off, and I'm going through the grass in the rain on rain tires, lose track of Tommy, but kept my nose clean, got back on the track, finished the race, win the championship, right? Whew, got it off my back, right? 2011, some things changed, and Yosh really got their stuff together, and Blake Young had his coming of age. So he ends up, man, I end up in these battles, right? And I can't tell you how many times I got second to that guy over the course of the season. I think I only won 3 races, but at the time DMG they gave away some bonus points. So qualifying, you got a bonus point for pole, and then to promote racing, they gave a bonus point to whoever led the most laps of a race, right? Because they wanted people fighting for the lead, not just sitting on wheels. And so I only won 3 races, but every race I won was like 4 seconds or bigger gap. And Blake, if you added up every race win he had for the season, it was like 0.9 of a second because I was right there every time, right? But he beat me, but I was there. and I just had a hard time getting free. But if I got a second up the road, it was like I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Right? And I managed to win the championship with those bonus points. I got all but one pole position for the year. I led the most laps of 90% of the races, so I had like 25 extra points.
Oh, dang.
You know, that's a race's worth of extra points. And he came into the last race, and I had an advantage. Here's a young guy on his way up, never won a championship, everything on his shoulders, and I'm rolling in going, I'm already got a championship. They can't take it away from me. I have nothing to lose. And so he had a difficult first day, and it put me back into control of the championship. And then we had a standard race the next day. Had some excitement in it with a red flag. Brett McCormick, the same guy I struggled with from Canada in the race the year before, he crashed and caused a red flag. And
This guy sounds like a real asshole.
We became really good friends later.
Did you?
We've
Okay.
talked about this story a whole bunch, but the next year he crashed again. He got into somebody and had the brake lever move up, and he went to move his brake lever and actually knocked himself down.
Oh, geez.
And red flagged the race. And I had like a 4-second gap at the time. So whenever we restarted, I got a bad start, heat cycled tires, and I ended up I started the last lap of the race in 7th place with Blake leading. And like this series of events happened, and I ended up second. It was a pretty incredible lap, right? But drama, you know. Then we rolled into 2012, and we had done quite a bit of work on our team to level the playing field a bit. And I got into some battles with Blake in Daytona, Atlanta, and then after that, I found my stride and went on a run that was pretty incredible. And I ended up winning 16 out of 20 races in 2012. And, man, it was just an incredible year for me.
Yeah, I'll say.
2013, I got 6 or 7 jump start penalties and was at war with DMG over all these penalties. I won 8 races to Josh Herron's 3. Would have had another 2 or 3 without these jump start penalties. Ended up second in the championship to Josh. 2014, Cameron Bobier came in as my teammate, and Josh went on to Moto 2. And we ended up with a short season. This was part of how the whole DMG thing started to fall apart, was they only had a 7-race series 7 races in 2014. And for a lot of teams, that was difficult because all the sponsorships were based on 10 rounds. And so John Ulrich had his own 3-race professional series with TV and stuff like that. So we kind of had 2 championships. One was called the Superbike Shootout, and one was the AMA Pro. Cameron was a formidable opponent his first year on a Superbike, but I managed to win those 2 championships. And then we got the new bike in 2015. Cameron and I ran the season 2015 on the new bike. I think I won 10 to his 8, but he won the championship. My bad day was worse than his bad day. And then some things started to happen for me kind of towards the end. 16 and 17 were my last 2 years. 16, in hindsight, I can look back at it differently than I did at the moment. But my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And I'm not one to take news hard, so I don't say I'd take it hard. But I definitely felt like it was very unfair. My dad's lived a great life. He's a great human being, one of the best people I've ever known, taught me everything I know. And here I am, a guy who's bounced his head off the ground 20-plus times.
And he's got the problem.
The problem. And honestly, I started making mistakes and looking for this to be my problem and creating my own problems. And then Keith McCarty let me know about 2017 was kind of like, hey, listen, times aren't easy, and we're about to go from a 4-rider program to a 3-rider program. And all of you are winning, but your oldest teammate is 25 years old, and you're 41.
Yeah.
Right? So 2017 is probably going to be it. He had asked me a few times before, how do you want racing to end? I think he was trying to figure out how to let me end the way I wanted to. And he goes, you want to go out on top, or you want? And I'm like, I
want to ride this
I don't ever
train.
see it, you know what I mean? So he finally had to tell me, look, you have a lot of racing past and not a lot of future, and all of your teammates have a lot of racing future and not a lot of past. And I don't want to do it, but this is what's coming. And I took the news pretty hard. I said, hey, look, if I win the championship, can I buy another season? He goes, it's hard to say no. So, yeah, you win the championship, I'll give you another year. But otherwise, it's going to go like this. And he wanted to keep me around Yamaha.
And that's a classy move.
He gave me a program that, okay, if it doesn't happen, we're still going to keep you in the family to mentor this program, and we want to keep you around. I'm like, okay, go out to the very first race, which is always a tough track for me at COTA, and nightmare weekend. You know what I mean? Crash. Now, I'm the writing's on the wall. I'm distraught about it. My dad's situation is sitting with me that I'm making mistakes and I'm losing it. Like, I'm all nostalgic about it. I'm going to go home and do all the things I did when I was successful. I'm going to train so hard. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I would get on my bike and I'd get to the bottom of my road and I'd be like, this is the last thing I want to do today. And I'd turn around and I'd ride back home and I'd get my golf clubs and I'd go walk the golf course. And I don't know if they're connected, but that year I got down to a 7 handicap. And it was the first year, for 12 years, I got first or second in every championship I raced in. And that year I ended up 4th. So I don't know if those are correlated or not, but
there might be some tied together.
I struggled a lot. And I went to Road Atlanta. Again, track I know I can be competitive at. And I tried to force it. I threw a motorcycle over the fence in turn 1, super fast. Road America, make a silly mistake and destroy a bike on the sighting lap and burn it to the ground.
Oh, my gosh.
Get to the last race at Barber.
Did Yamaha start to think you were doing it on purpose?
No, I hope not.
Hey, don't burn our bikes
I was
down.
doing myself bad, too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In everything I was trying to force to happen, I was going about it a bad way. And unfortunately, I had a last season that I wish could have been different, you know? And so it was okay, though. Like, I got to have an amazing career. So 18, I never touched a motorcycle. Just coaching. 19, Pridmore talks me into doing a classic race in Australia. Go ride over there, have a ton of fun. Melissa and I had decided to do the Daytona 200 on our own personal bike because that was the one that kind of got away. We had a good time, enjoyed doing it. We had this bike. And a couple people were like, we want to see you keep riding. So we ended up racing a few more races in Super Sport in 2019. But I was still kind of in my funk, you know. Mm-hmm. And now we had my young son, I traveling around in a motorhome, trying to, no sleep. I had gained 12 pounds just because I didn't get any sleep anymore with my boy. But at least I was still riding and having some fun. Mm-hmm. 20 starts off pretty good. Go to that classic race again and have a ton of fun over there in Australia. Go to Daytona, and COVID happens. They send us home in the middle of the event in Daytona. Don't run the race.
Wow.
We all sit on the sidelines, so I don't touch a bike in 20 or 21. I get to dabble in 22, finish with a broken leg. That was the crash I showed you.
One. Okay.
Yep.
We'll play that clip right now because that's a dirty
I'll
crash,
get that
dude.
one for you.
Jeez.
And then after that, it was like I joined kind of forces with a group of guys that wanted to do some fun stuff. And I got to, and I was riding and having some success in 22. And it was like the realization that all that my dad's stuff was kind of in the background. I was fine. Here I was, 5-6 years later, I'm doing fine. And I actually got to ride well and have some success. We did 2023, had some success. And then everybody kind of changed gears. I didn't get to ride in 24. And then here I am riding again in 25 at 50 years old. So, sorry, I covered a lot of ground.
No, it's perfect. And I mean, it's crazy that all these years later, you're still going out there and you're still competitive. And
I love this stuff, man. But I would bet against me.
And I said to you, this is
ways.
the cool thing about road racing is it's a little easier on your body versus motocross, so you can do it a little longer.
And
then you said,
grind.
oh, yeah, let me show you this video.
Well, the day-to-day grind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I ride motocross. I can't ride 4 days a week.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to walk.
I want to go back a couple of things.
Yeah.
2011, you got a chance to race a Moto GP event.
Yep.
And it was a fill-in for Colin Edwards,
For Colin
right?
Edwards, yep.
Tell me about that, how that came to be, what the experience was. I want to hear all about that.
Okay. This is a little bit of a story.
Well, let's hear it.
I'm gonna start at the beginning of 2011, or maybe end of 2010, when I was renewing my contract with Yamaha, and I was 36 years old, and I was signing it with Keith, and it was a 2-year deal, which is exactly what I wanted. And I said, and I was looking at it, and I go, I'm so thankful. I remember talking to Keith. I had a great relationship with Keith. I don't know if you knew him well, but
Pretty well.
I had a great relationship with Keith. And I said, I'm so excited to have this contract, but there's a piece of me that's sad because I'm going to have made a career out of motorcycle racing, right? I'm going to be 38, 39 years old when this is over, and I will have never experienced the top level of racing in the world. You know what I mean? Like, I'll never get to try a Moto GP bike. I'll never get to race in the World Championship. They're never going to take a near 40-year-old rookie. You know what I mean? And that part makes me sad. But it doesn't mean I'm not thankful for this. And I signed my contract and I gave it to him. And all I can say is he took note of it. And he always took pretty good care of me. Because there was a time, I remember there was a time where we were talking about contracts, and, you know, I said, when I signed it, that first contract was really good. And then I was signing this contract, and the money kept going down in racing. So I win Yamaha their first championship in decades.
And you get paid less.
And I got paid 60% of what my first contract was. And it was heartbreaking. And I was just like, this is what it was worth to you. You know what I mean? Like, at this time, and he was like, I'm sorry. I can't do anything
This
about
is the
this.
time,
This is
man.
what it is.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to him, like, look, this is my team. And if you tell me that's all there is, I'm going to sign this contract. But I asked for his help, and this was maybe the next contract, and he went and found me some extra money to try to help me out. Because I was like, man, I'm going to get to the end of racing, and I'm not going to have much, because I signed on pretty cheap in the beginning, you know. So, but I remember talking about this, and he was always pretty good with me. So he had arranged, he called me and told me one day, he goes, all right, I've arranged it. After you're going to go to the Valencia Moto GP race to spectate with your crew chief, with Jim Roach. And then, you know, Monday's off. Tuesday, the media rides the motorcycles, or Monday, the media rides the motorcycles. Tuesday, Wednesday is the first, like, official test where everybody gets on their new equipment. And you're going to ride a Tech 3 Yamaha M1 for the day. You're going to get to test for a day or two with everybody, with all the GP guys. And I've got this all arranged so that Yamaha's going to help you do this. Pretty incredible that he went to bat for me like that. So then, one of the worst things that happens in our sport, Colin Edwards, Marco Simoncelli, Marco gets killed, and Colin gets injured in that incident and can't ride it at Valencia. So I was actually at Portland, Oregon, at the racetrack out there, inspecting the racetrack for DMG at the time to see if we could possibly go there. And I get a call from Keith McCarty that says, hey, look, can you get suits made for this Valencia thing in time? And I go, I don't know. I can call and ask. He goes, you're going to race. Colin's injured. You're filling in. You're actually going to race the weekend. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Like, our championship had been over for like 3 or 4 weeks, and I had not done anything. Like, I was as fat and out of shape as I could be. And all I'd been doing was celebrating.
Yeah.
And so it was a bit of a, you know, like, uh-oh. Like, this is real? This is really happening? You know? So start trying to gather everything together. Melissa and I traveled to the event. So here we go. Racetrack I've never seen. GP bike. I'd known Ben Spies for years. He's in the next garage. Lorenzo was out. Nakasuga, their test rider, was on the Lorenzo bike. Cal Crutchlow's my teammate at Tech 3. And then here we go. And I've got the experienced crew. I've got all this stuff. And I'm so overwhelmed, right, by all of this. And it just keeps getting worse. So the weather is unreal. It is just like in Mississippi, we call that a frog choker. It is just downpouring rain nonstop. And all anybody keeps talking about is how terrible this racetrack is in the rain. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. But
Are you good in the wet, though? You're from
I'm okay
the
in
south.
wet.
I mean,
yeah, I'm all right. But it was absolutely probably one of the best tracks I've ever ridden in the rain, because there's not a racetrack in America that has one surface. Everything's patched, sealed, fixed,
Right.
you know, and over there everything's brand new. They just didn't like it.
Right.
So whatever. So yeah, when they rolled the garage doors up everybody was looking for a story. And when that garage door rolled up, there were 50 photographers waiting to get a picture of me getting on this motorcycle to roll out. And I was already about to shit my pants, right? And like, this was the worst possible scenario to me. And now the whole world's going to see what a fool I am, right? So one of the funny things was I rolled out, and the one thing I knew was that I didn't know anything, right? So 60-minute sessions. So I roll out, and I'm just riding. I'm riding. I'm just trying to learn and figure it out. And I'm riding. And
it's wet. It's already pouring
rain. And the thing's so fast up the front straightaway with that rain suit, I felt like it was going to rip me off like a parachute anyway, right? And so I'm just riding. And finally I go, you know what? I should probably go in and see the guys, right? Like, I've been out here for a while, just working on myself. I still had ideas, and then, so I kind of look at the clock, and there was like 3 minutes left in the session. So I'm like, well, forget it. I'm just going to finish out the session and roll in. So I did. I rode till the checkered flag. I rolled in, and I come in, and Hervé Pontral's like, man, I've been around racing a long time. I've never seen anybody stay out and ride an entire session and not come in and talk about all the things they want on their motorcycle. And I was just like, what was I going to say? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to ride this thing, so I'm going to go figure out how to ride it. And he meant it very politely. You're just like, awesome. We thought you'd be a nightmare, I think. You're going to come in and be like, oh, it's not like my super bike. Turn it into this. Yeah. So the afternoon's wet again. And, we tried some things and looked at some data or whatever. And then I think it was wet Saturday morning. Saturday afternoon's qualifying. Sun is beaming. The track is completely dry. And I got an hour qualifying session on a Moto GP bike on slicks, on a track that I learned in the wet, on tires, the Bridgestone slicks on those 800s, where they were like, that's the most unforgiving situation you can have. The first three corners are all lefts, and then the first right, everybody gets smashed. They're telling me all these awful things. Oh, you can't go too fast through there, but if you don't load the tire and create heat, then it'll hurt you even worse. It's just like,
don't tell me that.
God.
Yeah.
I've never ridden carbon brakes, like that have to kind of get temperature in them before they even work. So I'm rolling out in qualifying for this 1 hour session to figure out how to ride a GP bike.
I imagine it's like when you go to the driving range and somebody goes, okay, butt back, but keep this arm straight. Now don't bend this arm, do this. And you're like,
yeah, but imagine that if you didn't, the thing would whip around and hit you in the face. So yeah, like it was horrifying. So I go rolling out and I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I'm riding. I come in and we make some changes. I ride. And then I go out for my qualifying time, and of course, Nakasuga uses me as a tow, pops me and knocks me to last on the grid. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm not even like, okay, no problem. So we wake up and it's raining again.
Well, how was the bike? I mean, on dry,
it was different than I expected. Like it was as different to riding a super bike as riding a 450 dirt bike. Like they are
like what? Explain.
Nothing alike. For one, it didn't turn. Like they don't turn that good. They lean over really far and they have an insane amount of grip. But
so as
far as actual turning for the lean angle, for me, it didn't turn that well.
Is that for more stability for them? Higher speeds?
I think so.
Yeah,
They're really long. They're really low. So they're fast and they're stable. And again, they have a stupid amount of grip. And I just didn't understand how a prototype was meant to be ridden in the first place, right? So the brake power was incredible, how much you could put into it because the bike was so low and doesn't pitch. It doesn't pitch at all. In fact, probably the hardest thing was on a super bike, I can adjust how the bike rides so much by where I put myself on it, just like you can affect how a dirt bike gets through something by where you put your body. And on the GP bike, I felt like I made zero difference. The bike goes around it this way. If you want to load the front, you have to use the brake to do it. I can't move my body and affect the bike in any way. I was such a small part of the equation when it came to that. And I got 1 hour to figure this out.
Yeah, right.
So I'm behind, right?
Of course.
And it's like a really stiff chassis with soft plush suspension. It was just all this stuff is hard to understand, right? Wake up in the morning, it's wet again. So we all go out on rain tires, but it's not raining. And as the session, this 20-minute session is going on, we all destroy our rain tires, and there's a line about that wide, 6 inches wide around the whole racetrack.
That's dried up.
It's dry. So I come in with like 7 minutes to go, and I look at the guys and I go, "Can I go try the dry bike?" And they look at me like I had a horn growing out of my head. Like, "You want to do what?" And I'm like, "Look, the weather's weird all day. I have no idea what we're going to get into. It's too dry for these. Can I go ride that bike and just so I can understand this and that?" And they're like, "All right." And they're like, "We're going to be rebuilding this thing in no time, right?"
Yeah, they're going, "Oh."
So I go roll out, and I get a couple laps in, and I led the morning warm-up. I was fastest in the morning warm-up because I came in and got that dry tire bike. And I come in, and Hervé is just like in all my ears. He's laughing his ass off. Cal Crutchlow had been there for years. He hadn't led a session. So he comes in, and he was a fantastic teammate. He's like, gets on his knees, and he's like, and immediately after this, like we didn't even get out of our gear. We went to a different bike, and we rolled out and did a lap of the track for Marco Simoncelli.
Okay.
And I think Kevin Swans was riding his bike. But it was every bike, Moto 3, Moto 2, us on the GP bikes. Everybody went out and did this thing and stopped on the front straightaway and did a ceremony. And so we go rolling out.
That's cool to be a part of too. Huh?
Yeah, I know. I got to be a part of that. So we go rolling out, and I just happened to find myself near Valentino. He was on the Ducati at the time, and I couldn't figure out why, but this fucking punk ass kid on a Moto 2 bike just about knocks me off the track. Just comes up and jams me for no good reason. And I thought, well, maybe he wants to be around Rossi. So I just cruise up the group, and get away. Comes up and does it to me again. I'm just like, what is this dude's problem? You know what I mean? It was Scott Redding, and I still don't know what it was all about. But
he ran into you?
He just came up and jammed up in there, uncomfortable enough to be like, "What are you doing here?" kind of thing. And I don't really know what it was all about, but it was just like, whatever. He's a kid, right? So then we go over and we do our thing, and it's funny because I got Nicky and Valentino and all these guys walking over and asking me how the track was in the morning on the dry tires. Like, you guys are coming to ask me about this shit. It's pretty funny. Well, then we get out there and grid up for the race, and I've got all these open pipes pointed at me because there's no, it's all open pipes on those GP bikes. So when we do the start, I can't hear a damn thing.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I didn't launch my bike worth of shit. Like I was weak off the line, which was fine by me because the way that the brakes worked when, I didn't know if I'd have brakes in turn one.
They're that dull when
there's
they're cold?
nothing. They're like a block of wood. And then you have to pump them because if you just held it, it would go nothing, and they kind of get hot and activate, and they'll throw you over the bars.
Oh, my gosh.
So it's like you had to pump them a couple of times. And I had done a practice start, and when I went to the brakes, I didn't have any. It took me a couple of pumps. So I was like a little nervous about turn one because I didn't want to be a bowling ball anyway. So I get a terrible start, and it kind of lucky that I did. And I think Bautista.
Is it wet?
No, it's dry.
Oh, it's dry.
Start the race dry, so we're on slicks. It's my worst possible scenario. And Bautista, I think, was on a Suzuki, and he ends up knocking down Valentino and Nicky. So there's a couple of them out of the race in turn one. I'm battling with Nakasuga. He and I mean, he's the guy with more laps than anybody. He's the official Yamaha test rider on the M1. So he and I are battling. We're having our little race, and then the rain starts to come. And it's like, okay.
Where were you guys battling? What position?
Last.
Oh, okay.
we're in the back. And so, yeah, we're kind of having our thing, and then it starts to rain. And then it's like people start coming back to us. I'm like, really? Okay.
You're staying out on slicks, or did you?
No, we were out on slicks, and it never really rained hard, but it was getting wet. And, Tony Elias, Loris Capirossi, all these superstars are kind of coming back, and Nakasuga started to get away a little bit. Now he's, again, got more laps than anybody. Yeah. He knows all of this stuff better than anybody. And then, by the end of it, I ended up coming across the line, and I didn't get lapped, and I got 7th. So it was pretty incredible. I had a lot of help to get there, but I ended up 7th place. And I didn't feel like it was like necessarily that special just because of the race, but I had a lot of good people around me. And I remember Hervé Punchral being like, hey, listen, last year Carlos Checa, who was a GP rider for 10 years, won the Superbike championship, and as a reward, they let him come ride a Ducati GP bike, and he got lapped. You know what I mean? Like, what you did was pretty special. He was super cool about it. So, yeah, I nearly quit after the morning warm-up because I was like, I had a lap sheet where I was the fastest guy in the world. And I got, Casey Stoner, Nicky, Valentino, all these guys below me, you know, Dovizioso. I was like, this could be good.
Tell me you printed that out and have it somewhere.
I have it.
Okay,
I do have that.
attaboy.
But one other really cool thing that actually came from this was Keith had kind of arranged with those guys that Melissa would get to test something too. And she was really excited because the Tech 3 guys had a Moto 2 bike. And she really wanted to ride that Moto 2 bike. And Hervé goes, nah, you're riding the GP bike. So this was the last ever race of the 800 era. On Tuesday, when all the teams showed up, they put 1,000 engines in these chassis, and they all went out and started testing their 1,000s. And Dovizioso was leaving factory Honda, coming to Tech 3 to replace Colin, and then Cal was going to be testing his bike. So Cal didn't need time on the 800 because he had already ridden it, and Davi wanted to ride the 800 first as a direct comparison to his Honda and then go to the 1000 engine. And so they were like, no, Mel, you're going to ride Cal's race bike from yesterday, and then we put the 1000 in the other bike. And, she was just like, no, I just want to ride the Moto 2 bike. And they're like, nah, you're going to ride this. And it wasn't just like you're going to ride it because they had let people ride them before as these one-off events, and typically they would put in like a rain map, like really soft tires, and they were like, no, you're going to get 2 10 or 15 lap runs with full race, like carbon brakes, not the steel brakes. You're getting the experience.
The real deal. Yeah.
And so she got to go out and ride that thing. And I remember her being so afraid, like, what if I crash it? You know what I mean? I was like, hey, listen, they're never going to let you ride it again anyway. So if I were you, I'd go for broke and I'd stay out till you run out of gas. You know what I mean? And then we ended up being kind of a half damp, half wet, half dry track in the morning, But it was so funny because she rolls out and Cal and I are kind of giggling, and we walk out to the wall and poke our head through the wall to see her come up the front straightaway for the first lap. And Melissa, in her psychosis, is like, I will never give them an opportunity to make fun of me. So I am going to hold this thing on the stop the first lap up the front straightaway, no matter what. She had never seen the racetrack either.
Oh, jeez.
But, man, when she came on the front straightaway, Cal and I had our heads poked around the corner, and she disappeared. Like, her helmet looked like it just went completely below the windscreen, and you couldn't see her elbows. Like, you couldn't see it. She disappeared behind the bodywork of this bike, and she went by. I've got video of her going by full tilt. And I think that lap, her trap speed was faster than mine was from all weekend, even in qualifying.
Jeez.
So it was pretty awesome.
What a cool
she got that experience, and it was pretty special.
Well, dude, and I would say 7th is pretty damn amazing. I know you say it was whatever, dude, but like
in the moment, right? Like you go from winning, and then your expectations are all over the map. You have no idea what's going to happen, and you're like, well, I mean, I got lucky in a lot of ways, the condition. I can look back at it a lot different now.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't an easy weekend, and I went through all my routines that had been successful for me before, and it set me up for success all over again. So yeah.
We have a segment here called the Seat Concepts Hot Seat Question. Seat Concepts, making the best seats. You guys need one. Covers, full seats. Check them out. Who's the best road racer of all time? If you had to hand somebody a trophy, who is it?
Man, that's hard because I don't have a. When you start talking about the history of racing, honestly, I was so ingrained in what I was doing. I don't know a lot about the history of racing, but there's a few pretty special guys, I think, that are standouts. I think that when you get an A+ talent who's willing to work as hard as the guys that are the B+, A- talents, then you get these pretty special guys like a Valentino or a Marc Marquez, a Casey Stoner. I would have liked to have seen more of what Casey could do for longer, Oh, man. That's a hard one.
I mean, it's just your opinion.
Yeah, no, but it's like it's not something I really think about, But I think seeing Mark reinvent himself in recent years after injuries and be as dominant as he was, and see him do some of the things he can do on a motorcycle that no one else in the world can do, I would say probably Mark, and he's not done yet.
Yeah.
So,
what about American racer?
Again, it's a tough one,
Roberts, Rainey, Momola, like.
I know. My dad was a huge Eddie Lawson fan.
Eddie Lawson,
as I am. Man, it's so tough. Who is it? Like, and like I didn't know Kenny's era. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I didn't watch him. I know he kind of reinvented the game, but I didn't watch his era. But he's not American. But Matt was such a mainstay for so long here in America, and I learned so much watching him do what he does. He was pretty special. I think what Ben Spies did was pretty special. Whenever he went over to World Superbike.
Yeah.
Man. Colin, all the years he spent over there. I guess I'm going to have to go with Ben.
Yeah. All right.
Man. Him or Nick. Nick was pretty special too, I can't give you a straight answer. I can't do it.
Okay, it's all right. You don't have to. Tell me about Supermoto. We were talking about it earlier. You said you didn't really jive with it.
Yeah.
But I feel like that was the best. If you're looking for a way to train for what you guys do, man, what an easy fit.
It didn't carry over to me the same way, because no matter what, I felt like I was riding a dirt bike on pavement. And I couldn't take that feeling away.
Would you lean in like road bike style?
You
were moto style.
I was more moto style. It was just balance. Like I was way more comfortable there to manage whatever was coming.
Yeah.
And maybe with some, I have since then ridden bikes that were kind of set up and made to ride in more of the road race position, and I could do it, but neither of them felt natural. No matter what, I felt like I was on a dirt bike on pavement. And you don't get the same sensations. You can't load everything as much as you could on a true road race bike. And like even now, when I talk about it, people talk about Supermoto. I go, look, I see where there can be a benefit to it, right? But I think you should do the dirt and the pavement so that you take that balance and the skills in both arenas, and it opens your horizons even more. If you're just going to do kart track stuff, I kind of feel like the guys that are now taking, like if you want to be a road racer, if you want to be a superbike racer, take like a current 400 or something. That's a little overpowered for a go-kart track where you actually have to brake hard, multiple back shifts, stuff like that. That's probably a better training tool that carries directly over to the superbike than riding a supermoto bike.
Gotcha. I did see like guys like Danny Eslick would come and do some races.
Yep.
And they had that road race style, right? He would come into a turn.
Oh yeah.
Just dragging everything.
Yep.
And you're like,
he was doing that at that Queen Mary race we talked about, and I remember him bouncing it off the hay bales and catching the hay bales on fire to start that was at the start of the last chance qualifier.
Yeah.
The LCQ.
It was fun to watch guys that were road racers, bring that skill set in.
And now it's like that is like the super popular Supermoto videos that everybody's doing. You got Brandon Posh and SDK, like Sean Dillon Kelly, all these guys out there like dragging elbows with the things full lock, just cranked, dragging everything on these tall Supermoto bikes. And it's like it looks amazing, but it's like dragging your elbow. It doesn't necessarily mean you're fast.
Yeah, right. Just cool looking. Makes for good YouTube
Absolutely.
clips.
Absolutely.
I heard stories. We have a show called Code Red that's pretty loose. I told you about. And Johnny Lauch was on recently, and he trained Hopper and a few other Moto GP guys for a while. And he would tell me stories about them partying like crazy. Like that culture over there, they just go for it. Valentino Rossi smoking cigarettes, they're drinking the night before the race, like going hard.
See, I don't know much about all that, like, because I was never in that crowd, but I know what I felt like whenever I came out here and I saw John out here, I felt like he got it from the moto community.
Well, for sure. I mean, that was the 90s moto scene, right?
Right.
But I didn't realize, I guess I thought Moto GP was this super high level and everybody was very serious.
I mean,
but he said,
I think compared to some other things, for sure it is, because that's where the big money is, right? So the manufacturers are playing a big role. But yeah, I mean, that's like anything else. Like, you can do that until somebody decides not to.
Right.
Right.
Well, and he said even people would get mad at Nicky because
he was straight-laced.
And the day after the races were on Sunday, right? So everyone would party like crazy Sunday night. But
Monday, he's out training. Probably.
First one on the track.
Right.
As soon as the track opened up, they'd hear, and it was Nicky.
Yeah.
Every time, lap after lap after lap. I'm like, freaking Nicky. You know?
And he kind of forced the hand, right? Like, maybe I can't party all night because if that guy outperforms me tomorrow, he ruined all the fun. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
And
well, I wondered, was the U.S. road racing scene that way?
There was a time. There, for sure. And,
Not in your
honestly,
window,
no, I mean, I got to see some of it. I got to see some pretty amazing things, right? But you know what really killed all of that? The camera phone. Mm-hmm. All gone.
That's why the 90s were so cool.
You cannot afford to do it anymore because it could be a career ender, right? Like, as soon as the camera phone popped up.
You're right.
All that shit was gone.
Because everybody's constantly.
I mean, I remember I came here and I hung out with Hopper 20 years ago almost. And it was kind of my first time around Temecula.
Okay.
And Aaron Gobert lived over here in the neighborhood, and we were over at Aaron's house and hearing them telling stories about Aaron running around the neighborhood naked and stuff. And then we went down to little Hanny's house. And this is when he had just gotten his big KTM contract, if I remember correct.
Oh, boy. So he had Lamborghinis.
Oh, yeah. He had the big fancy house, you know. And watching these guys interact, it was like, yeah, this was like, you know, just a stone's throw from the Krusty Demons videos. You know what I mean? So,
well, John told me, I never laughed so hard because he said Hopper loved to party.
Yeah.
And he goes, when I started training him, I said, look, we've got to tighten things up, you know, in his South African accent. So what I told him, I said, listen, you can drink Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, but by Wednesday, maybe Wednesday, by Thursday, no more drinking. We clean through the race weekend, you know. And I'm like, so
good luck.
Yeah, I said, your hard line was he can only drink 4 days a week.
4 days a week, right? Yeah, it was just like
it made me laugh.
You know, but I mean, I remember, you know, all the racers used to meet up on Sunday night. We all flew on Mondays, right? So every racetrack we had a spot. At Daytona, it was the Ocean Deck, and then we had at Mid-Ohio Mike's Pizza Pub, and then there was a bowling alley in Virginia, and everybody, you know, the Bluefin at Laguna Seca that everybody went to Sunday night. And it was funny because you'd see all the guys that had all the drama during the race weekend, and now everybody's having a drink and laughing and shooting pool and talking and you know, all that kind of stuff. But eventually, you know, a lot of shenanigans happened at those things and a lot of good stories to tell, but that shit's all gone now.
Yeah.
Nobody can afford to do it.
Yeah, I know. It's
and now, I mean, now we're so far removed from it. It wasn't even you can't afford to do it anymore. Now, the kids that are the champs have never experienced anything like it. They just hear the stories.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you guys are crazy. I'm like, you would have been doing the same shit in the same situation. It wouldn't have changed.
Yeah. I guess everything has happened that way, you know, like, you know, your dad was a fireman. You should ask him about old firehouse stories.
Oh, I know.
Because I hear stuff from the guys who are long retired now.
Right.
Oh, we used to have women. The union would bring in hookers. And I'm like, whoa. They could have one beer a day.
A different time.
Like on duty.
Yeah. Different time.
It's a totally different time. Different world. Is there any type of racing you wanted to do that you never got to try? Any events or anything?
Oh, man. I really wanted to do that crossover event. And I remember asking Suzuki at one time back in the day, I was like, listen, if I win this championship, can I just try one 125 outdoor national? You know what I mean? And I really had no idea what I would be getting into trying to do a 125 national at that time. And I'm almost glad they said no.
Yeah.
You know, I never had any desire to ride a supercross track. I walk out there, I look at all those peaks, and I'm just like, nah, I'm good. Thanks.
Yeah.
You know?
The peaky boys are tough.
And I mean, I watch and I listen, and I know that the obstacles are not the hardest thing. If you have any speed, like they're not hitting anything. Everything they hit's off gas, just about, right? So it's all like basically like excite bike, right? Like the obstacle is the obstacle, right?
Yeah.
Every triple is the same as every other triple, which is why they can go out on the first lap. They know what speed and feel to hit it with, right? But the the cost is too high for getting it a little wrong to figure it out, I think.
Well, again, yeah, you have to have years and years of Rolodex
Right.
of hitting jumps and going, okay, I've seen this before.
Right.
Right.
I feel that way about ramps when I watch the guys hitting ramps. I'm just like, nope.
Yeah, I have.
Nope.
I'm nothing up here to check that out.
Yep. But no, I like for sure. And I mean, honestly, on a dirt bike, I have 12 gate drops in my whole life, probably, just in a couple years recently, I think 21, I did the 2 strokes out at Glen Helen. And I went out there with all my road race buddies. Peterson was hurt, so he was just hanging out with me. Chris Fillmore was out there. And after the first motos, they're like, man, this is taking too long. And they all packed up and went home. And so I think it was my birthday. I was out there. It was April 4th. Melissa was at home pregnant with our daughter. Our son had come early, so any day she was going to pop out. And, like, all of a sudden I'm on the most beat-out track I've ever, like, way above my level, beat-down track by myself.
Oh, boy.
And I'm just like, what am I doing? So I just got through my motos. And then I did the vets. I did the 450A for 40 and 45 plus. And so I love it. I want to do more of it.
Yeah, it's got to be the right thing, though.
Yeah, I just got to find the right time.
The Nationals, they used to do this at Washougal every year, and I think Hangtown was like a crossover event for surfers, skaters, snowboard, like any other athletes that weren't.
Well, I just remember they did Anaheim. I don't remember them doing it on outdoors.
They did it outdoors, and that was a much better fit.
Yeah.
Because even a national track will give you all you can handle, but less likely to go home in the ambulance.
Well, after living in Mississippi, this was culture shock coming out here. Southern California was just banging in 07, 08 when I came out here, right? I got married at the end of 07. We bought our condo here and moved out here. I remember in Mississippi, Louisiana, any given night that I went to the local motocross track, I might be the fastest guy there. And then I came out here, and I mean, I've been here 20 years almost, and there hasn't been a day that I've ever shown up and been the fastest guy at the moto track.
You ever been passed by a mini bike?
Yeah, of course I have. But I've had a couple of breakthrough days that are like that I'll never forget. I remember the first one was riding at Milestone, and I ran down Mickey Diamond. And I'm like, I just ran down a national champion motocross.
That's pretty cool.
I've done some laps with Ron Lachine out at Verona, and I liked riding with Ronnie, but all I got was a face full of 450, knobby out there at a hard track. And then actually not that long ago, last year, I love riding at Kahia. I relax there. There's an outside on everything, and I was just rolling around. I was having a really, really good day. I'm knocking it out. And I was catching this guy, and I go, oh, man, look, I'm catching somebody. He's rolling pretty good. And as I got closer, I went, no. Big number 2 on the back of his jersey.
RV? Or MC?
MC.
Oh, yeah.
I ran down MC on the motocross track one day. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I'm taking that one to the bank.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
that's pretty good.
Felt like I had made it.
Those are good days.
So
I had as you do when you get older, like you slow down a bit, at least me. And there was a jump at Paula one day. And I knew I could do it, but I don't ride as much anymore. Yeah, and I'm like, I'm not sure. Like, I don't want to go long. I don't want to go short. And I'm like, gosh, I need to find someone to follow. And as I'm sitting there looking for somebody, this kid on a 65, sends it. I'm like, oh.
Now you have to do it.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to follow this 65 kid off this jump right now. But, yeah.
I do that at Pala pretty regularly. It's funny because that spot is like such an oddity to me. Like it's some of the better dirt around.
Yeah.
But there's so many fast guys out there regularly. Most days the track it's not even like the jumps. The track gets beat out so bad that it's above my level.
Yeah.
Like all the square edges, the deep holes, all the chop in my hands. And I go.
Well, you know about the vet hours, right?
I'll just get hurt.
The vet hours are 9 to 11. You get the hell out of it.
Then you run.
Yeah, you don't know that?
Yeah. Right? And it's like the vet track is fun, but it's just the big track looks more fun, and I want to be over there. But at some point, it's like, all right,
hey,
all I'm gonna do is get hurt. I'm gonna dab a foot. I'm gonna fall on a wrist. I'm gonna like something stupid, and be upset about it.
10:30 or 11, you get out of there. That's
there.
the trick. We've got our Ethica fit check. I've got a hat, some socks, some Ethica stuff for you. We're going to send you with, and a Whiskey Throttle shirt. But before we let you go, a few more questions. Tell me about your family. You're married. You got a couple of kids. You guys live out here in Southern California on some land. You kind of seem like you got it dialed in.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I met my wife at the racetrack. She was in college, graduating college, and doing local racing here in Southern California at WSMC back in the day. And then it worked. You know, we clicked, it worked. And it's funny, I never thought I would even date a girl that rode motorcycles. I wasn't that interested, but I found her different.
Lo and behold.
So, she was from out here. I was from Mississippi. It was right after Hurricane Katrina when I met her. So I came out here to just visit. I was in between homes, and I go, there's nothing I could do. So how about I just come hang out until Daytona in March and get to know you? This is when I hung out with Hopper a little bit, actually.
Okay.
So she was graduating and kind of done with college. So I came out here. We had dirt bikes and bicycles, and we would go hang out with Pridmore. We'd go ride all the local tracks and hang out, and we were just having fun for a few months. And I was testing and this and that. And then I went home. She drove back with me for Daytona, and I got second in the 200. I'll never forget. She was like, "Oh, I knew you could ride, but I didn't know you were that good." I was like, "Rude," you know.
She's honest.
And then she came home. She was graduated. She ended up back in the Fresno area with her family. I was in southern Mississippi, and after a month or two, we were just miserable. I called her dad, and I said, "Hey, can I?"
Well, you're in Fresno in Mississippi. Of
Yeah.
course you're miserable.
So I called her. I said, "Hey, look, can I marry your daughter and move her to Mississippi?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm good with it." So I flew out and surprised her. She said yes, and I immediately moved her to Mississippi about 6 months after Hurricane Katrina. Nightmare. So
Did you guys get your home get boogered up in that?
I got kind of lucky. I was living in my childhood home. My parents had left. I bought it from them, and it was still okay. I had another house under contract, and then some business stuff happened where, houses couldn't get fixed fast enough. I sold mine cash because there was a housing shortage, and I got good money quick, sold it, and then I had nothing I could move into, and my deal fell through. Bought another house with a handshake deal, but it was going to be months before I could live in it. So, yeah, Melissa ended up coming out after that, and it was still pretty rough down there for quite a few years.
Yeah.
She did about a year and a half, and she was like, look, I don't have to, live next to my parents, but it would be nice to be a day's drive away, at least part-time. So we started looking. I had told her pretty straightforward, I'll never live in California. When you live in the South, everybody's idea of California is what you hear on the news out of L.A. and San Francisco. And it was like, yeah, it ain't going to happen, But she convinced me to come hang out in San Diego. And we had to go to Oceanside because it was the cheapest town on the beach in San Diego County. And, man, you talk about swallowing hard. I bought a condo for more than I bought a 5,500 square foot house in Mississippi for. And we did a winter out here, and we had a ton of fun. But she was club racing still, so we went back to the East Coast where club racing was really strong during the summer. And the next winter when we came back, my grandmother passed away. And that was kind of the last thing really holding me to Mississippi. And I had started to build my community in Southern California. And she said, will you just try a summer here too? And I never went back.
Yeah.
So we've been here ever since. We were there by the beach, right downtown, close to the beach in the condo for 6 years. We were pedaling out east all the time. We found a country house with 5 acres, 10 miles from the beach. And we were able to afford it. And there we go. That's home now.
That's awesome. You got into a sweet spot. What do you guys do for fun? Did you learn to surf or anything while you guys were down the beach?
Dude, so when we moved here, I'm like, I got this. I grew up on the bayou wakeboarding and skiing and kneeboard and all that kind of stuff. And I went out there on some foamies with all the crew and got up real easy. I'm like, yeah, I got this. So I went down to the local surf shop and bought a board. I got out there. My very first wave I paddle into, a pop up. I'm like, I got this. And then I got pounded the rest of the day. I came out, got pounded the next day. I don't think I've been in the water since.
Is that right?
Yeah, so
it'll humble
years
you
ago.
fast, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and of course I was stupid. I went out in January, so the water was 50 degrees in a wetsuit, and
usually a little heavier in the winter.
And I don't know. I'm like a cat. I don't like getting wet that much. So
yeah, I'm like a fair weather surfer. I wait till about July to go get in because the
when
water.
You go out in trunks.
Yeah, and then July till October. It's my favorite thing to do.
Right.
I love it, but
I got too many hobbies, man. Like all the motorcycle stuff. I like playing tennis. I pedal a ton and ride a lot of bicycles. And you start coaching. We got the kids. You got people coming in. It never ends. I don't get a lot of things that I would say are like 100% just for me. And when I do, it's usually I want to go ride my bicycle or ride my motorcycle.
Yeah, I get it. I just thought for me, like one of the things I love about it, I can do it till I'm old.
Yeah,
it's easy. Get on a longboard.
I figure I've always got time.
That's true. That's very true. So our last question we ask all of our guests is how you want to be remembered in the sport.
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that.
The legacy
I talk
question.
about this actually when I'm coaching.
Yeah?
Yeah, I say, what would you want your racing obituary to sound like?
Yeah.
I think that what I don't care about the numbers. It really doesn't matter, like, to me. They are all fantastic, and I feel lucky to have every single one of them. I will hope that respect of my competitors, that every one of them would say, I don't care what the weather was. I don't care if he was feeling bad. If that guy was on the grid, I knew it was going to be a race. That's how I would want to be remembered.
Well,
as a guy that just showed up and I was going to give you everything I had every time.
You were on top of the qualifying board in Valencia. I tell you, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like you did it, man. Well, I know you don't care about the numbers, but they're pretty impressive.
I'm blessed to have them.
Yeah. Multiple championships and crazy number of race wins. And
still winning.
Yeah.
50 years old, I won a race. Hard to believe.
Listen, thanks for representing the old guys. Just keep her in one piece.
That's what I hear every day. It's funny because I was telling one of the boys, I go, well, I was sitting next to my teammate who's like early 20s, right? And every single person that comes by goes, for the old guys, every single time. And it's like, man, why can't they just say, we hope you win?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
lean into it.
I go, the good thing is sometimes I get some really sincere. That's one thing. That age group, they'll be incredibly sincere when they talk to you and say, man, I'm humbled by what you're doing or whatever it might be, right? But also I'm like, my fans are buying motorcycles. Your fans' parents are buying motorcycles.
That's a valid point. Brings a lot of value to Yamaha. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming in, man. What a cool story.
Thanks for having me.
Cool career, and I've known you're a great guy, so hopefully that translates to the folks at home.
I appreciate that.
Get to see
hopefully
that.
We'll see each other out at the motocross track some more.
Oh, we will.
I need some lessons. I need a few things. I still think I can get faster.
Let's go.
I still have something in me.
Yeah, let's go. I'm into it. And maybe with track day, you give me some tips.
There we go. I'm good with that.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Hope you guys enjoyed Josh Hayes' story. Stick around. We'll be back to wrap up the show. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that chat with Josh Hayes. What an incredible dude. Known him a long time. He's always been so down-to-earth, friendly. Great motocrosser, too, man. He goes very quickly. Not quite as good as he does on the road, but pretty dang close. It's impressive. And the number of championships and race wins that he's got here, certainly a legend in American road racing, and just a great guy, great ambassador for Yamaha. And we were stoked to have him on the show. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, guys, support these sponsors of our show here. We do a lot of work making sure we don't let in any cut rate companies. These are all elite premium brands, and so we can stand behind them proudly and say we support the products they make and the companies that they are 100%. And we are really proud to have them partner with us to bring you these shows. Hope you're enjoying it. Lots to come as always. Thanks for watching. See you next time.